the big racist out there, but you're going to see incredible surges of support in the black community. In 2016, he only got 8%. I think he'll get over 20%. In 2016, he only got 27, 28% in the Hispanic community. He's already up around 40, maybe 45% here in Texas. And you know what happened with the Cuban American community down in Miami-Dade County. So based upon his policies, he has shown that he's a person that wants all of the boats to rise, not just a certain amount of boats.
All right, Colonel West, we still have a long night ahead of us.
Yeah.
We will maybe check back in with you later. We do appreciate your time. Thanks so much, sir.
My pleasure.
All right, and we, of course, have been asking you tonight, what do you think, and who do you think is going to win? Be a part of our NewsMax poll. Text the word poll right now to 39747. Again, text the word poll to 39747 for more on that. All right, let's get back now. Carl Higbie, Joe Pinion standing by. Joe, this is something you and I have been talking about for months. And, were we actually going to see the results on election night, the inroads that Donald Trump has tried to make with the black community, the Platinum Plan? I mean, we kind of joked about all the rappers joining the campaign lately. But all kidding aside, we're seeing the fruits of the labor.
You look back, you're looking at going to Miami-Dade, you had President Trump. Right now, I mean, if these numbers hold, you got Joe Biden was hovering around 54% right now in Miami-Dade compared to Hillary Clinton at 63%. That's an election. Right. So when you start talking about extrapolating that across the country to the extent that that's even possible, but you start seeing, again, these trends, like I said before, this Hispanic uptick in places like Georgia, this Hispanic uptick in places like Texas, where, again, when you start talking about those border policies that Democrats somehow thought was a winning issue for them, and yet it turned out at the end of the day that you can't actually compel people to believe in the issues for the reason that COVID, whether you're talking about like a drum for the better part of the last 18 months, it turns out it may have had the opposite effect.
Right. Well, it was also, you look at the campaign differences between, Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Joe Biden ran a campaign of like, hey, I'm not Donald Trump. Vote for me because orange man bad. Where Donald Trump was like, hey, guys, I know I came in as a wild card. I won last time, but this time, look at what I've done. All the things I told you I was going to do, I did. And people are like, I don't really care about his Twitter account. I like my paycheck a little bit bigger.
Well, I even think to that one point, I mean, look, we spent an egregious amount of time, I think, talking about COVID. I think there was naturally an industrial complex trying to put political commentators out of business. So we talked about COVID so much. But the hard truth is, again, if you go through all the states where we had the highest number of COVID deaths, the highest amount of COVID incidents, Texas over 900,000 cases. You're looking at Florida over 800,000 cases, 18,000 deaths in Texas, 17,000 deaths in Florida. It turns out that when people went into that booth to cast those votes, they were more concerned about supporting their family than the chances of them contracting the disease. And with Joe Biden providing basically a promise the size of read my lips to basically shut down America, I think when push came to shove, those people who on those push polls were talking about, yes, I'll vote for Biden, went into that booth and voted for president.
But it was on display, like we were talking about Michigan, clear display when they say, hey, look, Michigan people want to get out and work, and, Governor Whitmer is keeping everything shut down. We can't do anything. If the Democrats get in charge, is that going to be nationwide? And people, that was a resounding message, for Donald Trump, I think.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that her husband is out, boating around while everybody else is locked down.
Do you know who my wife is?
Not a good look when it comes.
Apparently they thought that we were going to have, gangs of roaming Trump supporters with guns, trying to intimidate voters.
Which has never happened.
No, Trump voters weren't running around intimidating voters with guns. They were out there filling in bubbles to support their candidate. And that's what we're seeing from state to state to state. And that may be the story of the night, the irrational fear that the media tried to push on America when the reality was all they were doing were rebuilding President Trump's 2016 coalition and then some on his behalf.
Well, it's clear that a lot of America is wise to the media's game, these poll numbers. They want to make their own choices. All right, you guys can see on the screen right now more unrest outside of the White House, folks milling about out there. Black Lives Matter square right there, again, outside the White House. And let's go ahead and check now in with Dick Morris, a presidential political strategist. He's a New York Times best-selling author and a columnist at dickmorris.com, also a NewsMax analyst. Dick, great to see you.
Well, John, great to be here with you.
All right, so some surprises out there based on everything that you've seen so far. And I think we're just seeing now that the Associated Press is calling North Carolina for Democrat Roy Cooper. But there have been a lot of surprises, Dick. What has been most surprising to you so far?
Well, I'm not sure I've been surprised. In fact, I was on your network at at I think 8 o'clock or 8:15, predicting that Trump would win by roughly what he's winning by. I think I felt that he would carry Pennsylvania by 3 or 4, and it looks like he is. I felt he'd carry Michigan by 3 or 4. He's ahead of that now, but it'll work out. He would carry Wisconsin. He is. Minnesota, we don't know yet. And we don't know yet the national popular vote. But I think that the really enduring point of this is that there is a tectonic plate shift in a realignment in the black and Hispanic vote. The core of the Democratic Party, the pedestal on the statue, has been chipped away. And in Florida, when the full numbers are out, I think you'll find that he gets 20 to 30% of the black vote and 30 to 40% of the Latino vote. And that's not just Cubans. Cubans are only a small percentage of that Hispanic vote. That's Mexicans, that's Puerto Ricans, that's all of them. And I think that the realignment we're talking about is going to echo through history for the next 10 or 20 years.
And Dick, I don't want to sound like a wet blanket here, but there is still a lot of the map to be decided tonight. Is there anything that you can see that should temper our expectations or things that you might be concerned about?
Not a damn thing.
That's a pretty definitive answer. Not a damn thing. You're not concerned about Pennsylvania, Ohio, none of that.
Nope. Ohio's already in. Pennsylvania's, it looks pretty good. He's ahead in Michigan and Wisconsin. As Alfred E. Newman said, what, me worry?
So there you have it from Dick Morris. There is not a darn thing in this map right now that he is worried about. Dick, great to see you.
Thank you.
All right, let's get over to Jessie Jane Duff now, an advisory board member for Women for Trump, also a co-chair advisory board member for Veterans for Trump, and a retired gunnery sergeant from the United States Marine Corps. Gunny, great to see you.
Good to see you too, John.
And you are one of the people, Jessie, that has been out there on the campaign trail. I get tired just keeping up with you on social media, all the places that you have been, especially the Women for Trump. You know, again, I don't want to get too far ahead of things right now, but there is something to be proud of tonight based on what you've seen. The hard work that you put in seems to be paying off.
Oh, I am absolutely thrilled that things are moving exactly the way we expected. The media should be ashamed of itself. Of course, not NewsMax, but many of the mainstream media were basically saying it would be a blue wave. We now see them sweating. They are sitting there now realizing that they're going to lose Florida. They're going to lose North Carolina. They are losing Georgia. And we're seeing the wave of red sweep over the nation. The states that Joe Biden should win, he has. But guess what county that apparently President Trump won? Scranton, Pennsylvania. The hometown of Joe Biden, who hasn't lived there since 1958. I mean, the American people were tired of this. I am concerned in Wisconsin. I heard that there were precincts that ran out of ballots. How is that possible? Republicans tend to vote on election day. I would suggest we need to rethink and start getting in there for the early vote because we can't
But Jessie, to your
allow
point,
these states.
you know, that prediction that was made that Republicans would show up, we're seeing that so far. And we expect to see that again for the rest of the night. Great to see you, Jessie. We got to run to commercial break. Real quickly, too, I want to update everybody at home. We have one more state to call for President Trump. That state is Utah. Put that in the win column for President Trump. Some more red ink on the map. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. More ahead here. Our special coverage of Election Night 2020 on NewsMax TV. Don't go away.
Tonight we are a country awakened to danger and called to defend freedom.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
One day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
This is keratin debris, where nail fungus thrives. Nonox Fungal Nail Clarifying Gel cleans out keratin debris, so your nails look clear and healthy again. A 9-month study shows Nonox Nail Gel is clinically proven effective. In fact, 90% of nails significantly improve after using Nonox. For the freedom of clear, healthy-looking nails, use Nonox. Pick up Nonox today at Walmart, Walgreens, and Rite Aid.
This is the 2021 Medicare Benefits Update brought to you by EasyMedicare.com.
Hi, I'm Joe Theismann. EasyMedicare.com and I want to let you know Medicare's annual enrollment period is here, and that means it's time to enroll or make changes to your Medicare coverage. Do what I did. Call the EasyMedicare.com hotline to see if you qualify for more benefits.
Like $0 copays, $0 deductibles, and $0 premiums, which means nothing out of pocket for you.
Find out now if you're eligible for dental, vision, hearing, in-home meal deliveries, telehealth services, and prescription drug coverage. Plans also include private home nursing, wheelchairs, or transportation to hospitals or doctor visits.
Don't fail to act during Medicare's annual enrollment period. Today is one of the last days to change your Medicare benefits, so don't wait.
Call EasyMedicare.com now and don't miss out on even one Medicare benefit.
Call 800-593-5428, 800-593-5428.
I got this mountain bike for only $11.
DealDash.com, the fair and honest bidding site. An iPad worth $505 was sold for less than $24, a PlayStation 4 for less than $16, and a Schultz 4K television for less than $2.
I won these Bluetooth headphones for $20.
I got these 3 suitcases for less than $40.
And shipping is always free.
Go to DealDash.com right now and see how much you can save.
I am so proud that I served my country. I can't imagine not having Wounded Warrior Project in my life. We need Wounded Warrior Project to help us in our ongoing recovery. My family learned that they weren't in this by themselves. Wounded Warrior Project definitely saves lives. I am living proof that this organization works.
All right, welcome back to Vote for America here on NewsMax TV. I'm John Bachman, and we're going to go over to Mark Halper now, who's standing at our monitor. And Mark, you know, we've been looking at these Significant Six all night. A couple of states we wanted to talk about specifically, Michigan and Pennsylvania, but also Arizona. And one of the things that's kind of, you know, possible, maybe plausible more at this point is that Trump might actually win Michigan but could lose Arizona. Talk to us about how things are changing.
Well, I think the main thing we've learned tonight is the president is a big man, but he can walk a narrow path, because right now he's doing it. We haven't projected any of the Significant Six except for Florida, but it looks very good for him right now in all 6. So Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Ohio, Iowa, and Texas. The president wins those, he's 2 states away from winning. Now, I had said he had one path to win, and that path meant Pennsylvania and Arizona, and that if he lost a single one of the 8, he couldn't win. Well, right now, we're not going to know Pennsylvania tonight. Philadelphia is having trouble with counting. There are a lot of absentee ballots, mail-in ballots still out there. He may not win Pennsylvania, but his team's feeling pretty good about it. But if he wins Pennsylvania, he still needs Arizona, we thought. Arizona right now, 75% of the vote in, the president is pretty far behind. So the question is, what would happen then? Well, one thing is the president has some pretty strong allies in Arizona. The governor is a very strong ally of his. The state legislature is controlled by Republicans. We all know that this process could get very complicated. But there's another possibility for the president to still win, which deviates from my Significant 6+2, which is Michigan. Sean and I earlier tonight and several times mocked the president for going to Michigan twice. He did what he did 4 years ago. He had his final rally after midnight in Michigan on Monday night. We thought, well, that was a big mistake, but it turns out it may have been the president once again showing he understands how to win presidential elections, because he could substitute in Michigan, and Michigan could substitute in for Pennsylvania if he won Arizona, or could substitute in for Arizona if he won Pennsylvania. So right now, if the president wins the Significant Six, and he is on track to do that, even though we've not projected that, the president would have to win 2 of the 3, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Arizona, 2 of the 3, and he would be reelected. And it is the case still on the Senate side and in the presidential race. All the news has been positive for the Republicans, not very much positive news at all for the Democrats. They're feeling like good about Arizona, but they recognize that Michigan could be a problem. And we're seeing in Michigan that the Senate race there, where a Democratic incumbent is being challenged by John James, a very popular candidate within the Republican Party, that could be a case, once again, where the president defies expectations and does what he did 4 years ago, which is to win Michigan, a state he was not given very much chance to win by me, but also by his own team.
Well, is there anywhere besides Arizona right now that Democrats can look at and say, hey, look, this is a glimmer of hope here?
Well, Pennsylvania. We just don't know what's happening in Pennsylvania now. Too much of the vote is out. As I said, city officials in Pennsylvania have said they're going to stop counting because of some problems there. There's lots of mail-in votes. So this great night for the Republican Party and the president, where they may win the significant 6, where the president clearly avoids a blowout, where Republican chances of holding a majority in the Senate is very much alive, that whole thing could come aground if the president is unable to win 2 more states, whether it's Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona. If he can't win 2 of those 3, despite having a miraculous night by almost any expectation, he still loses. He loses close, but he loses.
Yeah, and it's so important to emphasize this, Mark. It still is on a razor's edge. This thing could go either way. And we're talking about very small geographic areas in these states where the race is actually going to break, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, the vote is out in some places. We just had in North Carolina, a county reported 30,000 extra votes for the president. And when you're talking about projections, when you're talking about vote counting, the media doesn't have the capacity to know if mistakes are made typically. Sometimes they can notice a mistake. A county might report, more votes than number of inhabitants of the county. But in this case, the mistake was not noticed right away. And so we may see in some of these states where we believe the president's going to win, we may see things come back and say, you know what, too many votes were given to the president. Ohio and Iowa are states where we still don't know. We now believe we won't know who's going to win Ohio tonight. So things could still happen. But we go back to all the lessons we see in Florida. Florida, a state where the president narrowly won 4 years ago, far closer than Ohio and Iowa were, for instance, where he won with a high turnout. He won with support from African-American Hispanics.
Right.
He narrowed his losses amongst older voters. So there's lots of reasons to believe that the president's success in Florida can translate elsewhere.
And we tell you this, too, because it's not time to get calm yet. Stay tuned. Stay with us because there's still a lot to go tonight. And we're going to check in right now with Ellis Hennigan, a columnist for Global Metro Papers, and also join Joe Conason, editor-in-chief of the National Memo. Gentlemen, great to see you both.
Hey, John. How are you, buddy?
It's been a while since we've spoken, but I wanted to first start with you, Ellison. How are you feeling about the night so far?
Anxious the way I always feel on election night. I mean, it's a close race. We still don't know what's going to happen in that dangerous blue wall. And so, I'm on pins and needles like I've been all day.
Yeah, and Joe, there was some talk a couple of weeks ago about the, neglect really from the Biden campaign in South Florida, and that if this does break the wrong way for the Biden campaign, that Florida, and really South Florida, Latino voters specifically, would be Joe Biden's Michigan or Wisconsin for Hillary Clinton.
Well, it's true that Biden has kind of had difficulties with the Cuban vote in South Florida, and I don't think that's terribly surprising. But you're right. If he can't get through in Florida, then it's going to fall on other places where the Hispanic vote is key, like Arizona. And it's a different Hispanic vote, but still, if they have not managed the Hispanic vote as well as they should, that could come back to haunt them.
Gentlemen, we have just about a minute left, and I wanted to ask you this question because we talked about South Carolina earlier. So much hope in Democrats placed on the candidate, Jamie Harris, and didn't turn out the way Democrats wanted. Just wanted to get, Ellis, your reaction to that, and then Joe, follow up.
Well, it's a dream, but it's still a long way away. If you're trying to figure out what's happening tonight, though, don't think about that. Think about Michigan, Pennsylvania, the surprise in Arizona. Boy, that's the thing that's got me titillating over here. South Carolina was a nice dream, and ain't going to happen this year.
Joe?
Oh, that race is 701.
Do we have Joe with us?
Yeah, I'm here. I agree with Ellis. I think South Carolina was always a bit of a dream. Lindsey Graham seemed vulnerable, and he was right. Lots of Democrats wanted to see him defeated and poured money in there. But South Carolina is still South Carolina.
Yeah, it was a very expensive dream. We can say that. Gentlemen, great to see you both. Thanks so much.
Okay, John.
All right, let's get back to the panel now. And we got Sean Spicer, Mark Halperin here, and Tom Basilia joining us again. And we want to talk about Ohio now, Tom, because I know you've been on the phone talking to some officials there, seeing what's going on. And one of the things that we've been talking about is the paper trail, if you will. How many ballots are still out there uncounted right now? What's the situation in Ohio?
Yeah, so there are still over about 200,000
provisional ballots and absentee ballots that are outstanding in the state of Ohio, but in just the last about 30 minutes, the president's lead in Ohio has now surpassed that number. He was behind, it was then very close, and within that margin, if it stayed within that margin, we wouldn't know about Ohio until November 28th. So it looks like the president's team is in better shape in Ohio now, and we may know tonight whether or not we can call that for Donald Trump.
And Sean, that was a conscious decision made by the Trump campaign a couple weeks ago to pull out of Ohio. And they felt like they had it locked up, and
well, it wasn't just, let's be clear, they pulled out after the Biden campaign pulled out. They have kept resources on the ground. They have over 100 staff are still doing door knocks. The Biden campaign was down to low teens. So they mirrored that, but they still actually kept a significant amount of resources in the state to make sure that they didn't take anything for granted. I was in Ohio last week. The chair of the party there, Jane Timken, has done a phenomenal job of really deploying all the resources throughout the state and making sure that they keep their majorities in the state house as well. The race that was supposed to be tough there, the Steve Chabot race, looked a little bit short, had tightened up a little bit on the Republican side for him. So, I think at the end of the day, this may have meant another lost opportunity for Democrats, but Republicans did their job and got the vote out.
Yeah. And Mark, when we talk about this every week, we talk about the data that matter and the data that don't. And one of the things you said a couple of weeks ago was the advertising dollars, and that was what I was talking about, the money that was pulled out of Ohio in advertising spending. And you said it doesn't matter at this point because of the ground game.
Yeah, the ground game stays. One of the things that happened in Ohio that I don't remember ever happening in my career is that one of the local officials there, a former party official who's still a big supporter of the president, told the Trump campaign, the president doesn't need to come anymore. Now that runs counter to what always happens, which is state officials say, we need you, we need 7 more visits in the last week. They said, Mr. President, go someplace else. We will win Ohio for you with the ground game. That could have made a big difference. If he ends up winning this presidency because he wins Michigan, which he went to instead of Ohio, that'll have been a very fortuitous piece of advice that the president got.
Yeah.
On North Carolina, still a very, very close race, but Johnson and Union counties, 2 very big Republican counties, have come in just the last 45 minutes or so, and you see now the president is up. He's up about 2 percentage points, but still within that 120,000 vote outstanding absentee ballot margin. So now, instead of Ohio, we're looking at the possibility of a very long night or a very long week in terms of counting in the state of North Carolina.
I've got one other piece of news. We talked briefly when I was at the board about the president perhaps having 3 states now from which he would need 2. There may be a 4th state added to that list.
Well, hold that thought, because it's now the top of the hour. It's 11 o'clock here. I want to reset a little bit and welcome everybody back in. And if you're just now tuning in, 11 o'clock here on the East Coast, a very exciting night so far. With me here on the panel tonight, Sean Spicer, former White House Communications Director, and much more, of course, Mark Halpern, NewsMax analyst, and Tom Basile, former GOP official, still GOP official, right?
Well, host of America Right Now.
And a host of America Right Now, of course, not... saving that one for later. But so here we are, and a lot of excitement from Republicans tonight. And at this point, there is still, there's still a lot up in the air, and we want to kind of remind everybody on where things stand. So let's just kind of break it down. Sean, we'll start with you. Give us your kind of 30,000-foot view on where things stand so far.
Look, I said this in 2016. When you lose and you know you're going to lose, it still doesn't feel good, but you kind of expect it. When you win and you knew you were going to win, it feels good but not great. When you win and you thought you were supposed to lose, that's what we felt in 2016, right? We won with 306 electoral votes, winning states like Pennsylvania, Iowa, Michigan, and Wisconsin, states that Republicans had won since 1988 and before. I think you're feeling a similar setup tonight, where it's not just whether or not the president's going to pull out a victory or not, whether or not we're going to hold the Senate, or whether or not Republicans are going to lose a few seats or gain a few seats. The expectations set by places like the New York Times were so out of whack with reality. This reminds us again of the lessons that weren't learned in 2016 by big tech, by academia, by the mainstream media. This is a reminder, regardless of how it wins, but how wrong they were. The people we have on Newsmax every single night across these shows, I think, represent a different mindset that the mainstream media just isn't picking up.
No, it's a great point. And Mark, you talk about this all the time. There's a certain amount of this aspect that's not captured anymore by the modern, or the kind of status quo processes for gathering this information.
I've said this the entire cycle. It's hilarious to me that people who made mistakes 4 years ago sat down and looked at this and said, you know what, 45% of the country is a bunch of racists, a bunch of know-nothings, a bunch of people who are out of touch with reality. They're people who don't believe that we should have safety. They're people who believe that their kids should just dangerously go to school. They're people who believe that Facebook and Twitter are against them. And they've once again, whether the president wins or not, they've proven that they do not understand that this is a country that's more than Cambridge, Massachusetts, Manhattan, and San Francisco.
And Sean, hold on a second, because you mentioned that fourth state, too, because I want to get to that.
Yeah.
We were talking that you needed to have 2 states. Now it looks like there's 3 and maybe even 4.
Well, I've just been told from one source, but it's a very good one, that the Biden campaign is now worried about Nevada. That they now are phone
Those
banking.
6 electoral
They're
votes.
phone banking into that state. So if the president wins a significant 6, before I said he needed to win 2 out of 3, Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Michigan. If there's now that 4th state on the board, now we're talking about lots of paths.
Right.
And the president now can look at the possibility of winning this race. Maybe he wins all 4 and winning it close to what he won with last time.
And I almost joked earlier tonight about it's not really a race to 270. It's more like a race to 290, considering, we might not know those 20 electoral college votes. And if you can start to smell that 290 number.
Let me tell you how you're going to smell it. You just said, a lot of these states. Let me pull up. We see it on the board over there. New York Congressional District 11. Current one-term Congressman Max Rose being... Right, but you look at, he's faced off against Staten Island, New York Assemblywoman Nicole Malliotakis. She ran for mayor last time in New York, didn't do very well. She owns that part of Staten Island. Max Rose has been all over the New York airwaves, distancing himself from Nancy Pelosi, from Bill de Blasio. Look at that lead right now, 127 to 91. Yeah. That's not a squeaker. You're seeing this now in New York, in Florida, in Virginia, all over the country, where these House races are starting to tell you something that's going on.
He's a good politician.
He's
and he tried to be an outsider.
He tried to be a Republican.
But he tried to be an anti-establishment.
The voters of Staten Island saw right through that. Right now, I want to get to somebody who knows a little bit about New York, and that is Andrew Giuliani joining us now. He's the son of the former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani. Andrew, great to see you.
John, great to be with you.
Also an advisor to President Trump. So you're there at the White House. Give me, the vibe there. Everyone's got to be pretty excited, right?
Yeah, look, I think everybody's very optimistic right here. We like the numbers that we're seeing. As Sean was just saying, there are more states in play than I think the media wanted to admit early on in this. We're feeling good. We see multiple pathways right now, which is very exciting for us. Even if maybe New York isn't on the table, as Sean and I would like to think it is, we feel very, very, very excited about the fact that, Michigan's still on the table, Wisconsin's still on the table. Obviously, Pennsylvania is looking good. We're looking at Arizona right now. There are multiple pathways for the president to win this.
So give us some of the palace intrigue going on inside. High fives, backslapping, or is it kind of a quiet confidence at this stage of the game?
Well, first off, there's never the same palace intrigue as when Sean Spicer is in the White House. That's always the best palace intrigue. So we miss that for sure. But right now, I think everybody started the night and looking at it and just kind of felt, is that 2016 magic still there? Are the pollsters going to get it wrong the same way that they did? Are the pollsters who called it right in 2016, are they going to be right again? Through the first 4 hours of the night, we're starting to see that very well may be the case. So we certainly don't feel like we're there yet. We feel like we are. The first 4 hours went exactly how we wanted. Now we're still in for a long night, but I like the way that everything is trending, and everybody in here seems to feel the same way.
I just want to make sure that, Andrew, just to be clear, you're watching NewsMax there at the White House, correct?
Right.
That's where you guys are seeing it come in.
I don't know if you could hear Sean there, but Andrew, he wanted to make sure that you guys have the TV tuned to. Make sure we have the TV tuned to NewsMax at the White House. Can you confirm that for us?
Say that one more time, Sean.
We just wanted to make sure you guys are watching NewsMax at the White House.
You finally probably told a good joke, so I'm sorry I missed it.
No, I just want to make sure you have NewsMax on there, right? You're following this race on NewsMax.
Of course. Of course we are. We got it on every single TV right there.
All right, so that is the important report. Everybody needs the White House is tuning in, watching us. All right. So.
Well, thank you guys for calling Florida, too. I mean, we're waiting on some of the other networks to call Florida. I don't know what they're waiting for. It's pretty obvious when you look what's out, when you see the margin right now. Thank you guys for actually making the call on that.
Well, It's pretty obvious, right? The data that we have, guys, is pretty obvious on that state right now.
Empirical data.
Andrew, thank you so much for your time.
It's
We
empirical
appreciate
data.
it. We appreciate your time. All right, let's go.
Thank you, guys.
We want to talk about Nevada, this state getting some intrigue right now. And welcome in GOP Chairman, Republican strategist, Amy Tarkanian. Great to see you, Amy.
Hi, I'm actually the former.
The former, I apologize there. The poll's just now closing there on the West Coast. And we're hearing about some surprises in Nevada.
Right. So normally we close our polls at 7 o'clock, but due to technical difficulties at some of the polling locations in Clark County, which is our heaviest populated area in our entire state, that's Las Vegas, they decided to keep it open an extra hour. In Clark County, that's actually roughly 71% of our active registered voters. Prior to Election Day, we had roughly 1.8 million active voters, and of those 1.8, 200,000 or so roughly are actually new voters since 2016. So what's going to be the deciding factor here in our state? Democrats still out-register Republicans, and our fastest growing party is actually nonpartisan and independent. Those voters, I believe, are going to be our deciding factor. In 2016, Democrats voted upwards of 4% higher. This time around, Democrats, it looks like they're voting anywhere like around 1% to 2% higher. And Trump actually lost our state by a little more than 2%. So he made up a lot of ground compared to, say, McCain, who lost by 12, Romney lost by 7. So it very well may come to a very slim margin, and he may take our 6 electoral votes.
Well, we see the kind of dynamics of the 2020 race here. No third-party candidate really taking any votes away from the candidates. And also something that Mark Halpern has been talking about all day with the exit polls, these anti-government, anti-establishment sentiment, you know, and that's ironically, as Mark said, going towards the incumbent president. He is seen still as the outsider, and that would explain why those independent voters in Nevada are going for Donald Trump.
Well, and we also have a Democrat governor who put us on a pretty intense lockdown, and we're still trying to climb out of a hole. We're still not up full and running. We were actually one of the hardest hit for unemployment, and it's been devastating. He's absolutely decimated our state. So I think a lot of those votes, too, will also be out of anger and frustration towards our Democratic governor.
All right, thanks. Amy Tarkanian, great to see you.
You as well.
All right, well, our next guest we'll get to is Hogan Gately, the press secretary of the Trump presidential re-election campaign. Hogan, thanks for joining us.
I appreciate the time. Thanks so much for having me.
And we just want to make sure, too, you guys are watching NewsMax where you are?
Absolutely, of course.
All right, cool, because that's the only place you can get the call for Florida here. But Hogan, give us your feelings right now. What do you guys are looking at, and what do you see as maybe the next kind of W to put on the board?
Look, we feel really good. Obviously, this campaign has put together a turnout apparatus that is the envy of the political universe, something Democrats never thought possible. The world never thought we could do something like this. And what the left did was they put all of their eggs into the absentee ballot basket. And that's a problem because they weren't anywhere near the numbers they needed to solidify a victory early on. Always, Democrats are ahead in the early vote. But Florida's a great example of that. You guys called it early on, and Democrats were ahead by 19 points in that state because of the absentee ballots. But when in-person early voting started, we whittled that down to about 1%. No one thought that was possible, but it's because we have so many people on the ground, 2.5 million in this country.
But Hogan, this is what you guys always told us about after the rallies.
Last week.
Yeah, after the rallies, how many new voters you registered? How many Democrats had shown up to these rallies that had never been captured before? And this is, the fruits of those labors we're seeing now.
No, absolutely. We had anywhere from 15 to 35% of people showing up who were Democrats or hadn't voted before. And what happened is the Democrats actually left an issue on the table in which they cannibalized a lot of the folks that typically vote on Election Day by telling them, don't vote on Election Day, vote now, vote early. They don't have the numbers they need. They definitely don't have the numbers they want. And so what we were able to do in a lot of these states is what we're seeing is exactly what we predicted. our folks on the ground, getting people to the polls, reminding them the importance of this election, what's at stake, 4 more years of peace and prosperity with Donald Trump. And right now we're seeing the fruits of that labor. Now, we still got a long way to go. People who are in line, if there are any lines still left, stay in them. But the fact is, this president has produced for the American people, regardless of race, religion, color, or creed. His policies have improved the lives for all Americans. And it's important that the people out there understand what we were able to accomplish today, which was getting people to the polls, something Democrats did not have in their arsenal, and we did.
Hogan Gidley, thanks so much.
Absolutely.
All right, let's open it back up to the panel now and talk about some of the latest developments. Sean Spicer, Mark Halperin, Tom Basile. Tom?
You know, we've been talking about the ground game and the turnout operation, but there's something else that's been going on here in states like Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Florida, and that's voter registration. Yeah. The Trump campaign over the last 4 years has registered hundreds of thousands of new voters, and you also have people, particularly in the state like North Carolina and Pennsylvania, who, because of the leftward lurch of the Democratic Party, people are self-identifying less as Democrats today than they were when Barack Obama was president.
Let's take that and go now look at the balance of power in the Senate, guys, and talk about these Senate races so far, how it breaks down. Very close. 42,
Very close,
42.
but we've talked about North Carolina, just to bring that back for a second.
Yep.
The president has now, with almost all precincts reporting in, obviously without the mail, 2601 of 2662. The president is now opened up about a 1.5 lead. But to your bigger point here, Tom Tillis is ahead now in the race, 2,631,266 votes to Cal Cunningham's 2,536,731. Again, you're seeing that momentum move in the direction. That seat is really important for the balance of power in the Senate.
Yep.
You got the pickup in Alabama with Tommy Tuberville defeating Doug Jones, the Democratic incumbent. That's a pickup for the Republicans. Tom Tillis holding this seat in North Carolina is a big seat. That was one that Team McConnell went into the night really worried about. Obviously, the Trump campaign went into it worried about it as well. But when you're seeing this kind of a lead come out of North Carolina, almost a full 1.5 now for Tillis, that's big. Because right now, you start to realize that there's not a lot of ground to make up. And going back to what Jason Miller said a while ago, a lot of these counties are where they expect Republican votes to come in. So this is good news for Tom Tillis, it's good news for Mitch McConnell, and it's good news for Donald Trump.
And you're also going to have you have a lot of outstanding military ballots in a state like North Carolina. That would accrue benefits absolutely to Tillis.
Mark?
Nancy Pelosi could eventually confront this reality. Congratulations, you're Speaker again, and you're working with Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and President Donald Trump for 4 more years.
She could wake up being a smaller majority. That's going to be a problem. I think Nancy Pelosi has stemmed a lot of the concern at the beginning of that last cycle from the AOCs. She was challenged by Tim Ryan of Ohio. A lot of it was taken back by people saying, wow, she's a brilliant tactician. If she ends up going into the next Congress with a smaller majority, there's no question you're going to see AOC and others challenge her, if not just superficially, but that's not a good place. They expected to be picking up seats, and Kevin McCarthy was going to be questionable whether or not he was going to be. He may be the brilliant guy. Tom Emmerich, the Congressional Committee chair there, these were all people that places like Politico were writing were on shaky ground going in tonight. They may be coming out big heroes.
Yeah. So right now we've had one switch on each side. The Democrats have taken a Republican seat in Colorado. Yep. The Republicans have taken a Democratic seat in Alabama. So that's net zero. We suspect there'll be a Democratic pickup in Arizona. If the president's reelected, in order to get the majority, Democrats need to pick up not a net 3, but a net 4. And there's fewer seats left on the board, it appears.
And look, he's looking good in Georgia.
Exactly.
David Perdue, the
David Perdue may be
the red 2 Georgia races. One of them is a special election. We got 21 candidates running in it. It's a there's no way you're getting
I want to get back to Georgia, and we can talk more about the red firewall holding in the Deep South. Let's get to Emma Reckenberg now, who is going to give us an update on social media. Emma?
Hey, John, a lot to get to on social media. First, we did want to give you an update on that 11th district race in North Carolina. We know Madison Cawthorn has won it. The 25-year-old will be the youngest person serving in Congress. And since we have been watching social media all night, I wanted to share that NewsMax is actually trending right now on Twitter. People like what they're seeing. Here's conservative radio host Eric's Metaxas tweeting this saying, breaking, I'm calling NewsMax over the incumbent Fox News, with just my family and some Twitter people I follow reporting. But he's actually not alone. Actress Leigh-Allyn Baker saying this, watch NewsMax for real news. And Trump advisor Sebastian Gorka saying this, biggest loser so far could be Fox News. Well, that's just a handful of tweets recognizing our coverage, and we thank all of our viewers for joining us here at NewsMax. John, back to you.
We certainly do, Emma, and thanks for that. And we're going to take a short commercial break here, but before we leave you, we're going to take you live now to a polling location just outside Philadelphia. You can see votes being counted feverishly, but we might not know what's going to happen out in Pennsylvania. Probably won't know. But the vote tallies count continues. We'll be right back after this.
Speaking? Huh? Have you heard anything about him speaking?
But I hit NewsMax first in the morning.
Oh, great.
First in the morning. Fastest rundown of the news.
Important people go to NewsMax. Watch NewsMax TV. Plus, get breaking news from NewsMax.com. We're real news for real people.
As someone with hearing loss,
Got it. And Joni's good, right? All right, I got to go.
All right, welcome back. We got some updates to give you now.
Thanks, man.
First, we want to talk about Ohio, and we are going to call or project Ohio for President Trump right now. 99% of the votes are in, a total of 18 electoral college votes, and we're going to go ahead and put Ohio in the win column for President Trump. Other states to talk about, the polls closing at 11 p.m. on the West Coast. No surprises here. California, Oregon, Washington State, and New Mexico all going for Joe Biden. All right, let's get to Emerald Robinson now, our White House correspondent, who's joining us live at the White House. Emerald, what do you got?
Hi, well, you know what? It's ramping up a little bit here. We're seeing a little more energy here as these results are coming in, seeing some more good news for the president. Of course, you just spoke with White House advisor Andrew Giuliani to get a sense of what's going on inside. Yes, there's a lot of positivity that we're hearing about, you know, discussions in the White House, how they're feeling about the president. The president's been watching these returns come in the residence, but the party is getting started in the East Room. We are hearing and seeing some social media posts. There's about 200 guests in there. They've set it up with video screens, lots of American flags and chairs for the guests. There's somewhere around 200 guests, as I said, including Steve Mnuchin, the president's Treasury Secretary. He responded to a social media tweet suggesting that he had been spotted there. He simply replied, yes. So the party is getting started. There is a hesitantly hopeful sense here. At the moment, we do expect to see the president in the East Room shortly. I'm actually going to be in there, and I'm waiting to get taken back, and it sounds like that could be happening sometime in the near future. So hopefully we'll be bringing you some scenes from in there as well soon. John?
Let us know what happens, and we'll check back in with you when you are available. Great to see you.
Yeah. Thanks.
All right, let's get back to the panel now and welcome in. Sean Spicer is still sticking around with us. Mark Halpern's here. Heather Nauer coming in with us.
Hi.
Great to see you, Heather. Thanks for coming back with us.
First good news of the Democrats since a long time.
Yeah, it's been a while, right?
Fox News is projecting Arizona goes to Biden. Now, we're not projecting that, and no one else has, and perhaps they won't. But Fox News, like the other broadcast and cable networks, pretty cautious. So we go back to the past for the president. Starting tonight, I didn't think the president could win without Arizona. Now our attention has to turn to two states, Michigan and Nevada. Mm-hmm. But if the president can't win those, and he still hasn't won Pennsylvania,
right?
He comes up short.
There was some warning about this red mirage at the beginning of the night. Mm-hmm. Does this represent that, perhaps?
No, I mean, the red mirage was supposed to show up in places like Florida or places, some places in the significant six, or in Pennsylvania. We just don't know what's going on in Pennsylvania because the vote there is not going to be done tonight. So, if the president loses Arizona, he's got to find a place to make up those electoral votes. And going into tonight, I didn't think he could. It's not clear that he can.
Right.
But we're now back to him winning states that very few people, even I'll say again, his own advisors thought he could win.
All right, let's get to Betsy. Oh, well, hold on, we'll get to Betsy in a second, but Heather, go
Yeah,
ahead.
sure. I was just going to add, in the state of Arizona, there's been a bit of a lack of enthusiasm among regular Republicans for Senator Martha McSally,
Yep.
who's fabulous, by the way, and absolutely should be in Senate leadership among the Republicans. So she's had a really tight race that she's been running. But you had Cindy McCain, who went out and campaigned on behalf
Jeff Flake.
of Joe Biden. Jeff Flake. You've got to win Maricopa County, which is where Phoenix is, right in that area, in order to do well in that state. And so they've had some problems in their own internal politics
Well, look,
in Arizona
he's
among
down.
Republicans.
The president is down over 203,000 votes right now with 73% in. That's a lot. When you're talking about a total universe of just under 3 million votes, I mean, so that's a lot to make up. You know, I don't know that we're ready to make that call yet, but, you know, you've got a part in the northeast of Arizona that is still yet to come in. I just don't know. In Maricopa County, I don't think that he's got enough there, and that's going to be the problem, is that that's the nut of that state, vote-wise.
We'll get to that in a second. We'll follow up on Arizona now. I want to get to Betsy McCoy, the former lieutenant governor of New York, a NewsMax contributor as well. Betsy, great to see you.
Thank you. So if we're looking at places where Trump has to gather electoral votes to offset this likely loss in Arizona, what's so disturbing to me is what's happening in Pennsylvania. Now you have 7 counties that went for Trump last time and are likely to be for Trump this time, announcing that they will not be counting their absentee ballots tonight. This is a very troubling development, along with the Pennsylvania Supreme Court saying they're going to count ballots next week that may lack signatures or lack postmarks. People really have to focus on Pennsylvania. You can see now how critical it will be.
Yeah, critical indeed. And what do you see as the remedy for this situation? They're not going to count the ballots tonight. We know there are going to be legal challenges. How long is it going to take, Betsy?
It's hard to say how long it's going to take, but let's not kid ourselves. We need answers to why those 7 counties are not doing what would be routine. We're not talking about waiting for ballots that may come in over the next 3 days, but it wasn't until tonight that they said they're not counting the absentee ballots that they already have. That's very unusual, and it appears that Pennsylvania doesn't want people to go to bed tonight with Donald Trump in a significant lead in the state.
And Betsy, as we see on the screen right now, vote counting happening in Pennsylvania, live vote counting outside of Philadelphia. Betsy McCoy, the former lieutenant governor of New York, we appreciate her time. All right, let's welcome back out the panel now. Mark?
I want to talk about another path, which is one that people have talked about for 4 years, and I never took all that seriously, but now a 269-269 tie.
Wow.
We joked about this a lot.
Yeah, and I'll tell you.
I feel like this is like a parlor game that you play. You never think is going to happen.
So the president, let's say he doesn't win. Let's say he wins a significant 6. He loses Arizona, loses Nevada, loses Michigan, wins Pennsylvania. That puts him at 267. How does he get to 269? The electoral vote in Maine in 2nd district and Nebraska 2nd district. So the president now has another path to a tie, even if he only wins Pennsylvania and nothing else.
I would say that the interesting thing is that Maine 2 he won last time. I mean that's
he won them both last time.
Yeah, that's a tough. I mean, right now Biden has a decent chance of both. That 2nd congressional district in Nebraska is the Omaha, right, the area where Biden's actually done okay. You saw the president make a stop there the other day.
Everybody was like, Nebraska.
Well, they knew it.
The 2nd congressional district might as well be the Upper West Side of Manhattan.
Right.
But that tells you, I will say, that shows you that the president's campaign was smart enough to double down on that one electoral vote. And God forbid we end up there tonight. That whoever made that decision to go to Nebraska is going to, get themselves a raise.
That's Susan Collins in the early returns is doing pretty well in Maine, and that's going to require her to do well in the 2nd congressional district. There could be ticket splitters, obviously, but that's, that is a path for the president to keep this thing alive, even if he's unable to win the 2nd state after Pennsylvania.
I'll tell you, we've mentioned this before with respect to Arizona. The president had to do well in Maricopa County. There is one candidate recently that did win statewide without winning Maricopa County. I think it was a school board something. I mean, it was not a significant position, but they did find a path there. The president's down significantly in Maricopa County. So I think it's going to be very hard for them to make up the ground in Arizona. Who knows what the campaign's going to say, but I think he has to start looking at other paths right now. The good news is, we went back to this earlier, in North Carolina, his lead is pretty much cemented. We have everything but 10 precincts of 2662 total precincts in. The president's up by over 1.5 points. That should make them feel very good that they can count that as part of Mark's significant 6. Now they can focus on where they need to. He's still up in Georgia. He's up in the places where, again, now you got to really start to focus on that Pennsylvania.
A slight delay in the vote counting in Georgia. There was a pipe burst at the State Farm Arena, which caused a delay in Fulton County. So it's going to be a little delay there, one of those weird 2020 things. But Heather, you think about this scenario, a 269 to 269 tie would be maybe the most 2020 thing to happen in 2020, right?
It certainly would, wouldn't it? I was going to get to Mark's point in talking about Maine, and Maine has 4 electoral votes. If we're talking those kinds of numbers now, looking at those states that have such few votes, we could look at a state like Montana, which has 3 electoral votes, and it looks like it's heading toward Biden right now, at least taking a look at some of the numbers that have come in thus far. But they also have an important Senate race there. And so one that Republicans have been watching very, very carefully was Steve Daines.
All right. Well, let's get to Craig Shirley, a Ronald Reagan biographer, presidential historian, and New York Times bestselling author. And Doug Weed is also here with us, author of Inside Trump's White House. He's also a presidential historian. And gentlemen, we were talking about this scenario. It's kind of a parlor game, as Sean was saying, maybe some fan fiction if you're really into politics. But think about this, if you will, gentlemen. The historical significance of a 269-269 tie in the Electoral College. Craig?
Well, people don't realize, John, the 1976 campaign was almost that close, is that Carter won, but barely in the Electoral College. He only won Ohio by 7,000 votes out of 3.2 million cast. And he only won Hawaii by only 2,000 votes cast there. If both those states had both flipped to Gerald Ford, and the fact that there was one faithless elector from Washington State that year who voted for Ronald Reagan, it would have been under 270. It would have gone to the House of Representatives. There's no guarantee, even though the House was firmly in the hands of the Democrats, is that Gerald Ford, of course, it was a creature of the House, had a lot of friends there. Carter didn't. So nobody's to say that that Ford wouldn't have won a vote in the House of Representatives on a 269 to 268 tally in the Electoral College.
And that's the scenario that sets up a vote goes to the House of Representatives. It's determined by, which party has the most state delegations, and Republicans have that. Doug, would you ever even, flirt with this idea that we could have a 269-269 tie?
Well, it could happen, and it's ironic because Donald Trump is constantly compared to Andrew Jackson, and he's the guy that it happened to. The first 6 presidents of the United States were Brahmins. You had to be either an Adams from Massachusetts or you had to be from Virginia, a Virginia tobacco planter. They were all very wealthy, and they all attended an Episcopalian church, though one of them was Congregationalist. And here came this rough Westerner, Andrew Jackson, a Presbyterian, outrageous, got into duels with people and lost his temper, and they didn't like it. He was opposed to the national bank, the second national bank, and they kept him out. They threw the election into the House of Representatives. It was called the corrupt bargain, and the nation reacted to that and overwhelmingly voted Andrew Jackson in as president later. So it's happened, but people don't like it.
No. And thanks for the history lesson. Doug Weed, great to see you. And Craig Shirley, we appreciate your time as well.
You bet. Thanks, John.
All right, we're going to take a short commercial break here. But before we go, a live look at Joe Biden's campaign headquarters in Delaware. Cars lining up. Some nervous Biden-Harris supporters there. Stay tuned. Our special coverage of Election Night 2020 America Votes right here on NewsMax TV. Do not go away.
NewsMax, you
All right, welcome back to NewsMax TV's special coverage of Election Night 2020 America Votes. I'm John Bachman, and let's welcome in our panel one more time. Sean Spicer here to my right, Mark Halper, and also to my right, Heather Nauer joining us as well. We're going to talk about Arizona now and what looks to be a Biden victory, Sean, but specifically Maricopa County is the area of concern.
It's a big enough concern that he's down enough votes I just don't see that there's enough out there that could come in, and no one's saying otherwise. You know, when you're down like the president is right now, if you think that you're going to win that state, you're putting out tweets, you're putting out statements saying, wait, it's the military vote, it's absentee, it's early. They're not fighting this. That says to me that they're moving on. But as Mark said, there are other paths to go forward. The Trump campaign still at least is exuding a sense of optimism. And they do believe there's paths to go forward on this. But that Biden, apparent win in Arizona has got to give them a sigh of relief in Delaware, because I think that the most of the night was not looking good for them. And a lot of the things, again, North Carolina, Georgia, places where they thought they were going to pick something off is not looking there. So, we'll see. But right now, that Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, all those other ones starting to make sense. But, Mark's significant 6, now they got to find another path. Like, this is where we're going. And,
And Mark, when you look at the demographics of Arizona, there was a bit of a challenge when it came to the pandemic with senior voters in Arizona, and obviously that's a factor.
Sure, but the president won Florida, where there are a lot of senior voters. I've never understood his problems there, to tell you the truth, because the way I always think about these electoral college fights is who's more likely to be elected governor of the state?
Right, Republican.
Arizona has not elected a governor anything like Joe Biden since Bruce Babbitt back in the 1980s. And so I don't really understand his problems there. I never have. I assumed he would do well there. The Biden campaign now is saying correctly, they don't need Pennsylvania. They can stop the president from getting to 270 without it. But would have to sweep all the things remaining on the board. The big puzzle to me is Michigan. You look at what's now in almost half the votes in. The president has a gigantic lead. And if you look at where the vote's out, it appears the president may well win Michigan.
Can look, I said this before. In 2016, we looked at a bunch of states. We knew we were doing well in Florida because of the vote. In South Florida, we were overperforming. Hillary Clinton underperforming. In North Carolina, we were supposed to lose by 5. We found ourselves up. We knew we won. I told you before, we also looked at Virginia. I knew that we were supposed to get. Here is the vote in the state of Virginia with almost all precincts reporting. Donald Trump is right now basically, this is not the race that people thought it was going to be in Virginia. He is actually ahead right now in the state of Virginia with 40 precincts out. He's got 1.4 million to Joe Biden's 1.35. That's not how Virginia was supposed to go. He was supposed to lose by between 9 and 12 points. The idea that it's this close.
And we're also now going to go ahead and call Texas for Donald Trump. Yeah. We're going to put that in the win column for Donald Trump. But go ahead.
Here's a significant dog that has not barked that we all expected would be barking from kennels across America. There's not one state right now where either campaign is saying publicly or privately to us, there's problems here in the vote.
Right.
There's fraud, there's error. There's been none of that. So, as Sean said, I don't hear a word from the Trump people about Arizona. I haven't heard a word from the Biden people about Florida. I haven't heard a word from them about Texas. I'm hearing a little bit from them about Ohio. So if we go forward here as we are, we're not going to have a winner tonight. No one's going to get to 270 tonight because Pennsylvania is not going to be projected, and I suspect some others won't either. So we go into tomorrow where the question's going to be, obviously, first and foremost, who wins Pennsylvania? But then, can the president find another state? And what the Biden folks are saying now is they believe they can checkmate him. He will get right to the precipice of 270. But they will win everything else that's on the board that we see there as not currently obviously going to one side or the other.
I'm going to repeat it one more time just to make sure everybody heard. We are going to go ahead and project Texas in the win column for President Trump. Again, Texas in the win column. A little bit of a drama there, but ended up as we expected. Sean, back to what you were saying about Virginia. You talked about Scott Taylor earlier, a guy who was in Congress, lost his race last time. It does seem to be there's some clawbacks from some of the, Democratic wins.
Virginia's 2nd district is down in that Tidewater area. You've got Norfolk. Scott Taylor is a Navy veteran, as is his opponent, Luria, the current congressman. She's a Naval Academy graduate. So they've got, it's sort of Navy on Navy down there. But it fell back to its traditional roots. I think Scott Taylor had some issues at the end of his first term. The campaign got a little sloppy, and Elaine Luria was able to take it away from But, right now in the 2nd Congressional District in Virginia, Scott Taylor is up 53-43. That's a big deal for him. But then again, you go to Virginia's 7th District, where Abigail Spanbauer defeated David Bratt last time. That's the old Eric Cantor seat. It takes part of Richmond, goes north, so you've got a little bit of sort of the old southern part of Virginia, and then it kind of stems into the suburbs of D.C. almost. Right now, Nick Freitas is up 60.82% to Abigail Spanbauer's 39% with 228 of 232 precincts reporting. That's big. That's a district that they flipped. And here's the funny thing, that I see those ads where I live in Washington, D.C. Abigail Spanbauer's ads did not look like a candidate on the run. These were the candidates, it was all positive, fluffy ads. This did not seem like a candidate that was going hard at her opponent. I would have told you anecdotally that she was probably in a pretty comfortable position. But again, look at these overall statewide results in Virginia. This is the Washington, D.C. suburbs. This should have been the resistance. Right. These are the people
we used to write off Virginia, to the blue state.
Not all of us.
Well, a lot of people used to write it off and said it was lost to Democrats for good.
But this, I just can't get over the fact that the Northern Virginia suburbs, these are people that should have been hardcore out. What this means is that, that there was a lot of people who weren't out there, because you look at like the 10th district and other places that touch in that. The 5th district where Congressman Devin Riggleman lost his primary to Bob Good right now in the 5th. He is up right now in the 5th district, 53.4 to Cameron Webb, who's a very good candidate, 46.3%. These are states that the Democrats really thought that they could either hold or, in this case, in the 5th district, take over.
And does that translate into other places around the country? We'll see.
What it tells me is Michigan. It explains a lot of Michigan.
We'll get back to Michigan in a second. They want me to check out this tweet. We're going to put it up on the screen right here. New York Times columnist Nick Kristof, I'm looking at the exit polls. I'm struck that a majority of those who decided in the last week broke for Trump just as they did in 2016. Also, 35% of Latino men and 17% of black men supported Trump more than many anticipated.
John, what do you mean he's struck? That just shows you that he's sitting around Manhattan with his other people that are sitting around Manhattan, talking to their academic friends, not understanding what's going on. If you insist on staying in these urban areas and not going out to the rest of America, no wonder you're struck. This is the problem with so many folks in the mainstream media. They don't get it.
And it's not even that. We all saw the polls tightening in the last week. The trend lines were all moving in this direction.
People,
all of us sitting at this table did.
NewsMax
but the
saw
narrative
this.
was the early voters.
Right.
And that the early voters would all break for the vice president. And so whatever happened at the end wouldn't really matter.
Right.
That's what so many in the media were saying. But it has, and it is, and it does matter.
All right,
and the president went out in full force.
Panel, we'll get back to you guys in a second. Well, let's welcome in now Jeffrey Lord, columnist of the American Spectator and former associate political director for Ronald Reagan, and Kelly Sadler, former special assistant to President Trump, communications director at America First Action. Kelly, Jeffrey, great to see you both.
Hello, John. How are you?
We're doing great out here. Jeffrey, I want to start with you. We'll get to Kelly in a second since you are in Pennsylvania right now. Jeffrey, a lot of anticipation, a lot of excitement. We're not expecting a definitive result tonight. But what are you hearing from your sources there in Pennsylvania?
Well, what I can tell you, John, I'm here on the ground. I've been to one rally after another of Trump supporters. Thousands and thousands of people. I have to tell you, I came up through the Pennsylvania political system. I have never, ever seen anything like this. These folks are energized, and what that translates into is what I exactly saw this morning when I went to vote. The line was long. John, I had to wait an hour to go cast a vote. That's never happened to me. This is unbelievable stuff to me. So all I can say is I just think this is incredible stuff that's going on here, and they've stuck with their president, the candidate they favor. And, we'll see what happens tonight. But, boy, man, are these people energized.
Again, Kelly, we're not going to know the result of Pennsylvania for a while here. But if it does break for President Trump, the Biden campaign will look back on the debate and talk about, his failure to really deliver an answer that was acceptable to the people of Pennsylvania on the issue of fracking.
Oh, absolutely. And I want to congratulate Joe Biden for winning Delaware. I mean, he campaigned the majority of his time in Delaware. 95% of his events were in Delaware and Wilmington. So thank you for winning Delaware. However, in Pennsylvania, the issue of fracking, the issue of the economy, of raising taxes is huge. And we were up with ads on June 4th hitting Joe Biden on the fracking issue. And we really saw that resonate, so much so that the Biden campaign had to respond to it, saying like, oh, no, I'm not going to eliminate fracking, after Kamala Harris said that she would and after Joe Biden said that he would. So I believe that the voters in Pennsylvania know where the two candidates stand on the issue. Even if they don't know where Joe Biden stands on the issue, they know that President Trump has their backs and will always be for the, fossil fuel industry.
All right, Kelly Sadler, Jeffrey Lurie, great to see you both. And of course, we'll check back in with you as news warrants later this evening. Great to see you both. Next, we're going to get to Jenna Ellis, who's live with us from the White House. She's a legal advisor for President Trump's campaign. And Jenna, we were just talking with Jeffrey and Kelly about Pennsylvania, and something you and I have been talking about for a long time is the legal team President Trump is going to put in place, or has already put into place, to deal with this situation in Pennsylvania. What are you anticipating after tonight, Jenna?
Yeah, well, it really depends on the electoral count, because if Pennsylvania is irrelevant in terms of the pathway to 270, then of course the precedent matters to the Constitution. It matters that the Constitution specifies that the legislatures of the state determine the electors of the state. And so Pennsylvania has unilaterally done that outside the scope of the U.S. Constitution, so that matters. But in terms of the actual election, we're still hopeful that Pennsylvania won't even matter. I think that there are several pathways, even without Arizona. Of course, that was called for Biden, but with Texas now, as NewsMax called that for President Trump, we're still very, very optimistic that there are still several pathways to 270, even without Pennsylvania.
And something that Mark Halperin was saying earlier is that we haven't really heard any cries from either campaign about chicanery or malarkey, if you're the Biden campaign, with these vote tallies.
Yeah, so, that's been a really interesting issue. And of course, there has been a lot of voter suppression on Facebook in terms of the videos of the voter intimidation in Pennsylvania. There has been reports of having all of the poll watchers, the certified poll watchers that in Democrat districts have not been able to participate. So all of these things, of course, amount to voter suppression, voter intimidation, and things that really are not part of a free and fair election in our American constitutional republic. And so, of course, these are things that the Trump campaign, the RNC, and of course, President Trump has been very clear that we are going to fight. And of course, we are going to try to protect the ballot for all Americans and to make sure that this is a constitutional process, because we are a nation of free and fair elections. And so, again, I don't know that it will matter to the outcome of the presidential election, but it may matter to the outcome of state and local elections. And of course, that matters. And if we've learned one thing in 2020, state and local elections matter. And so all of this just shows how the Democrats do not want to play by the rules. They want to manipulate the Constitution. They want to ignore the rule of law. They want to manipulate it or even outright ignore it. And that's not the constitutional process. President Trump has always been very clearly on the side of the U.S. Constitution and making sure that our rule of law is what triumphs at the end. And every American, regardless of what party you are, regardless of who you voted for, every American should want our process and our Constitution to prevail.
Jenna, is the music on inside?
Yes, the atmosphere inside, I just came from the party, and we are very optimistic for President Trump. And I think that Team Trump has always been the party of optimism, of making America great, keeping America great. And so, yes, we are definitely partying inside the White House, and we're confident that President Trump, at the end of the day, will be the victor and get another 4 years. I'm really looking forward to that.
All right, Jenna Ellis live for us at the White House. Thanks so much. All right, let's open it back up to the panel. And one of the things that we were kind of talking about earlier, there's 2 electoral college votes in Maine, the 2 electoral college votes in Nebraska.
Yep.
So, we were looking at Susan Collins as well in her race. Mark, what's the update there?
Well, she's ahead. Heather correctly pointed out we've got this weird thing going on in Montana. Now we need to bring Wisconsin into the conversation. So, the president being weaker in Montana than we thought, the president apparently losing Arizona, those things go against the grain of the notion of a Trump surge at the end. But when we talk about the exit poll suggesting the president picked up people at the end, just as he did 4 years ago, that is, I think people are going to want to unpack that and figure out what was it at the end. Was it his turn to talking about Hunter Biden and corruption? Was it his turn to talking about China? What exactly was it? But what we're going to see now is a question of, will the candidates speak tonight, number one? And number two, what happens tomorrow? A lot of states stopped counting. We know in Pennsylvania they've stopped counting because of Philadelphia, but a lot of states are currently counting, but at some point as it gets past midnight, some election administrators, either statewide or at a local jurisdiction, just say, you know what, everybody's tired. We're going to come back and do this tomorrow. Yeah. I suspect that what's going to happen is we're all going to be back at work at around 6 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow in various news organizations. And people are going to start asking the question, okay, how quick is this going to be counted?
Yeah, and people are going to have to be very patient. They want me to run through the West Coast states one more time. We're going to show California for President Trump. We mentioned also earlier New Mexico, Oregon, and Washington State also going for President Trump. Not a real surprise there either. Sean?
I was going to say, Mark mentioned it, but you look at Wisconsin right now, you've got 71% reporting. President Trump right now is just shy of 52% of the vote. He's got about 1.2 million votes. Last time in the state, he had a total of 1.4. So you got 30% of the state still out. And this goes back to what we talked about Florida. He had to grow the vote. He only won Wisconsin by 24,000 votes. This actually could be another random path. And you're looking at this. The Biden campaign is actually well behind where they were last time, which is interesting. They're right now at just over 1 million votes. Last time, Hillary Clinton got 1.382 votes and lost. The Biden campaign has to find those additional, right now, they're looking at, they're going to need probably 350, 400,000 votes if they have any chance of pulling this out. This could be a state, again, that the president pulls this one out.
And he went to visit, much against the advice of lots of people in the media, against my understanding of what he was doing. And I'll say again, a lot of people on the president's campaign team at senior level said, why are we going to Wisconsin?
It's instincts, and that's what it comes down to. The president seems to have it.
But remember, back in 2016, everyone questioned why the president went to Wisconsin, and then remember Hillary Clinton not going to Wisconsin,
right?
and
He
exactly
went to Kenosha.
why.
And so that's going to be a key area because, again, these are these swingers. If he can drive that vote up in northeast Wisconsin, in Kenosha, just south of Milwaukee, that's going to be big. And so look,
and
again,
also an indication of the visceral reaction that the American public has to these riots and the looting and
well,
and the failure of Democrats to really take a stand against it.
And that Kenosha really put that safety issue on the map because it wasn't a big city anymore. This was represented to a lot of Americans. This can happen in my town, my small city. I think that this will be interesting because, again, this things could be close, but it could, this is, again, where he could pull out another 10 electoral votes.
All right. However, let me just mention this about Wisconsin, Waukesha County, which is just to the west of Milwaukee. I'm being told it has Trump doing 4 to 6% worse than he did in 2016. So that would be significant.
It would, except, again, the whole strategy was to make it up in rural areas, registering more people to vote. We know he's going to...
And these are the suburbs. Waukesha is the suburb, yeah.
We know he's going to take hits in the suburbs. He's going to take hits in the suburbs of Pennsylvania. I suspect he took hits in the suburbs in parts of Florida. But he made it up other ways, and that's going to be the goal again here.
Yeah. All right, and that's what you saw where he went. It's very strategic to drive that vote up in those areas outside of, in those key places.
All right, we're going to get to Bill Currier now, the chairman of the Oregon GOP and the chief petitioner of the Governor Kate Brown's recall. Also with us, Lauren Wright, politics lecturer at Princeton University. She's also the author of Star Power, great book, and on NewsMax contributor. Lauren, Bill, great to see you both.
Hi.
Is Bill, are you there?
I'm here.
All right. Well, thank you both for joining us. Great to see you.
Absolutely.
Lauren, we're just talking about some of the, scenarios in Wisconsin, Michigan, things no one predicted. Are you somewhat surprised by some of what appear to be the same mistakes being made by some of these pollsters and the media?
We don't know yet because there's so many mail-in votes to be counted. And as you just mentioned, a lot of that will be done tomorrow. But what's clear is this is not the dream scenario for Democrats. They would have much rather, won these states like Florida and Georgia and North Carolina where we have the granular data and we have the breakdowns for in-person versus mail-in voting. That is absolutely not the case. And so we now know this will be close. Both campaigns now are buckling up for a fight. It will take days now at the very least.
You know, Bill, we were just talking about the situation in Kenosha and what impact that may have had on voters there. Obviously, the violence in Kenosha, not all that different from the violence we saw frequently play out in the summer in Portland. And, you know, Portland is much different than the rest of Oregon. But what type of impact is that violence having on a state like Oregon?
Well, a lot of impact, especially in the urban areas. Folks that are traditionally more liberal in their leanings in the Portland area have stated time and time again that they're fed up. And we saw a huge number of people, 33% of our signers of the petition to recall the governor were non-Republican. So that's a huge turnout for this state.
All right, Lauren, we look at the kind of the map writ large. You're not so convinced that things are going as well as a lot of Republicans might be thinking right now. But what do you think has moved voters in places where some people may have been surprised, specifically South Florida, for example? A bit of a surprise early on in the evening. We found out the potential that there might be 2 House seats picked up there. President Trump overperforming what a lot of the pollsters predicted. What do you think were the kind of the factors that led to that?
Well, you know, of course, I'm going to wait until we can talk to some of these people and have more studies and more polling. But certainly a big mover of support for President Trump that wasn't predicted was Hispanic men in Florida. A lot of Hispanic communities in Florida and South Florida in particular. That really matters. And so, you know, President Trump, again, in 2016, he did well among moderate Republicans, independents, undecided voters that swung for him. But what we're also seeing this year is Republicans voted for their nominee. A lot of Democrats voted for their nominee. Just the power of partisanship in this country. And we have very close elections, and we will again this year.
Well, we're going to go ahead and take a live look now outside the White House. We've been checking into this, and you can see the protests. These are Black Lives Matter protesters. You can hear them in the streets. You know, Bill, what do you anticipate might happen if Donald Trump does win tonight? A lot of people calling for violence. We've seen businesses boarding up all over the country. What do you anticipate would happen?
Yeah, we're getting clear indications that there's going to be a lot of what they call direct action in the Portland area and even outside of Portland here in Oregon as a result of the election. Actually, regardless of which way it goes, but more so if and when President Trump wins. So they've been planning this for a long time, and we're fully expecting it. We are basically in Oregon preparing in concert with the local FBI offices to handle these situations. And this is an issue that President Trump highlighted multiple times during the campaign, is the violence in Oregon. And so I think we're going to see some good numbers for Trump in the Oregon election for the president.
Well, we'll see what happens, and we see the live look, if we can get that up one more time, just to give folks an idea what's happening outside the White House right now. We don't have that anywhere. We showed it to you just a few seconds ago. Things getting tense outside the White House. We've shown you lots of video throughout the week of businesses boarding up, people bracing for the worst. And if the trend lines continue, we might see a Donald Trump victory tonight and the reaction that might follow. Lauren, great to see you. Bill, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, stay with us. Our special election coverage continues right now. All right, welcome back. It's midnight here on the East Coast, and I just got one of the best teases ever from Mark Halperin. We'll get to that in a second, but let me reintroduce everybody we have with you on the panel. Sean Spicer staying with us. Mark Halperin's here. Heather Nauert's here. And we're going to talk about something that's very weird in a second. Mark Halperin just mentioned this, but first we're going to get to the situation in Georgia. Right now, we're going to go ahead and call the state of Georgia for Donald Trump, put that one in the win column. Another one of those states which now looks like it was fool's gold, Sean, to Democrats.
You know what's shocking? I just got a text from someone. If you're not watching Newsmax, you are getting a completely distorted view of what's actually happening. Over on CNN, they have yet to call either Florida or Texas for real Donald Trump. They've got him at 114 electoral votes. There's just, I mean, there's a reality that they are not willing to accept right now. So, I mean, I've said it earlier in the program. If you want to know what's going on, text your friends, email them, call them. Well, maybe don't call them. It's midnight on the East Coast, unless you're on the West Coast. Tell them to tune in now, because right now they're missing the analysis that's happening. I mean, the idea that people at other networks aren't even calling Texas for the president right now is just, you know, who knows what kind of, you know, the reason they have for it. Right. But the reality is that this is a much closer race than any of these folks predicted. And I think part of it is they don't want to be wrong.
They've been so careful about so many things. You hear they don't want to influence the outcome of everything, but you know, in some ways, the media's treatment of Donald Trump is backfiring on Democrats.
I have, like I said, I've said it for 4 years. It is the reason that many people have given me over the last year why they're voting for Donald Trump, because they do not like the media's, what they perceive as the media's starkly one-sided coverage on a range of issues, not just directly related to the president, but on culture, on education, on the pandemic.
On religion.
On religion, they just think, on school choice, they just think it's one-sided. So I pushed a lot of states where they seem to be headed. And we talked before about something that would be the most 2020 thing.
Yeah.
This would be the least 2020 thing. It is totally within the realm of possibility that the Electoral College map will be exactly the same as 4 years ago, with the exception of Arizona. Every other state could end up exactly where it was 4 years ago.
And where does that leave us total?
That the president would win 293 to 243, which he would claim would be the second biggest win of all time. It would not be, but it would be slightly, it would be 11 votes short of what he did last time.
Mark, one of the states you brought up earlier as a possible path for the president was including Nevada. Mm-hmm. And that, you know, that state does not go for Republicans historically, but they also have a 12.5% unemployment rate. Mm. So I'm wondering how that is going to factor into things
They have a big unemployment rate. They have a Democratic governor. They've been very pro-lockdown, and you know, you think about the people who work on the Strip, a lot of whom are Hispanic Americans.
You bet.
They want that thing opened up. They don't want to.
We haven't really opener versus closer.
And we haven't really talked about this as much as, you know, Democrats banked on the fact that Donald Trump will get blamed for the pandemic. They run a lot of campaigns. They spend a lot of money on commercials trying to hammer home that point. And what we're seeing in these results in Nevada, maybe an indication of that, is that, you know, they're more likely that voters are going to blame their local officials.
Well, that's what comes down to. Look, where I think it got convoluted is that they looked at handling of the pandemic versus handling the overall situation, which included the economy. Mm-hmm. The idea of shutting down things.
Because it is an economic issue.
It is, and they're inextricably linked. And the problem is that folks in the media looked at, you know, whether or not the president was praising Fauci as the sort of be-all and end-all. But at the end of the day, Mark's right. For these people who work in an hourly job or have a blue-collar job or who run a small business and are being told you can't open your shop, you can't go back to work, that matters. They want to see a president out there talking about getting them back to work, opening up the economy, allowing their kids to go to school. They understand the challenges of the economy, but we're hearing silly stuff. The CDC put out guidance today that said if you have COVID, you can go and vote in person.
That's nuts.
That doesn't make any sense. It's completely contra to everything.
You can protest against Donald Trump. You can go vote if you're actually sick and tested positive for COVID, but you can't attend a Trump rally.
Sean, I saw that today. My jaw dropped. That makes it look as though the federal government,
or at least go to the CDC for medical
guidance, or at least those in the federal government who don't want the president elected are putting out that information specifically for that reason. That's going to drive a lot of people to start talking about, you know, a deep state type issue.
Let me jump in here real quick. Just want to mention this. We have Trump supporters now outside the White House. We've also talked about the Black Lives Matter protesters outside the White House as well. That's a little bit of a tense situation. Let's check in now with NewsMax national correspondent Logan Raddick, who is live at the White House. And Logan, give us an update for us. So you have the Trump supporters there. We saw the Black Lives Matter protesters. Are these two groups being separated?
For right now, they're still together, but there could be some separation coming in the near future, because what we did see was a calmer protest earlier on, but a much more intense group of protesters has shown up at Black Lives Matter Plaza. We're even seeing fireworks being shot up into the crowd, and there are some Trump supporters there trying to make their case for why they're out there supporting their candidate, whereas a lot of the people out here are anti-Trump. You have some Antifa flags flying around out here on the plaza just outside of the White House. So tensions are running high, not as hectic as you would expect tonight, obviously, since we don't have a concrete decision just yet, John.
All right, Logan Raddick, keep an eye on that for us. We'll check back in with you. Thank you so much. All right, we were just talking about Nevada. Let's check in now with Steve Sanchez, a syndicated radio host at KDWN in Las Vegas. Steve, thanks so much for joining us.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
All right, so Nevada, not a traditional stronghold for Republicans, but there's some good news apparently coming out of Nevada.
You know, we're enthusiastic out here. I'm doing a live radio show, election coverage myself. And what I'm hearing on the street, what I'm hearing from political strategists, what I'm hearing from the chairman himself, Michael McDonald, the Republican Party chairman of the state of Nevada, is it's tight, but it's looking really good for Donald Trump. And, the poll, or actually the voting polling places just closed about an hour ago. So now we're starting to see, more good news coming.
All right, Steve, thanks so much. We'll get back to you in a little bit. I want to get an update now, too, on Arizona out west. And they're telling me, Mark and Sean, that Fox News had called Arizona early, but now there's some backtracking there, some data maybe that would indicate otherwise. But based on what you were saying about Maricopa County, it would still be tough for Donald Trump to make up that ground.
Well, look, I mean, again, a part of it is understanding what's out right now and what's in. And I think the question is, it was going to be a tough haul. I don't know why. I mean, I'd have to take a look at why they're saying that. But again, I think it is, there's no question that he was down a significant amount in Maricopa County. That there's not a lot to make up.
Right,
if you're not, I mean, you got to keep that thing close.
And the Democrat, Mark Kelly, won the Senate race, apparently. It's a strange night.
By a lot.
It's a strange night in terms of projections, because we've had a number of instances now where one entity has projected a winner, and there have been crickets from everybody else, not just for a little bit, but to this point in the night.
It almost seems like there's an overthinking of the absentee
Well,
ballots.
there's clearly they're clearly being careful, and the White House would say they're being too careful because it's hampering the storyline they would like to project. But I've been doing this since 1988. I don't remember a night where there was so big a gap between a single projection by one entity and no projection by anybody else. There's the Mark Kelly race.
I'll tell you this right now.
Second Democratic
in Maricopa
flip.
County, the president is down almost 150,000 votes. So he's down roughly 10 points in Maricopa County alone. That's just a big delta to make up. Now,
unless there's a mistake.
Right, that's the thing. And if there's a mistake, if there's something that's not being seen, or there's a big, but you look at some of these other counties, and again, just to give you one idea, I mean, you're talking about, roughly 1.5 million votes in Arizona coming out of Maricopa County alone. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, you got to find a place to make it up. Now, I'm not saying we haven't been paying a ton of attention to that, but there's nothing that we're being told, right, by Arizona officials, by the Trump campaign that says, hey, look over here, go look to one of these other counties, to Yuma or something else, and saying, oh gosh, hey, there's a big bucket here that isn't being counted, and that's what's causing. At least giving me a little bit pause to question why Arizona would be in question here.
I was surprised that in your interview with Jenna Ellis, she talked about, up on her constitutional horse, she talked about all the things that have been done to disenfranchise voters. She didn't say, and of course we'll be at the courthouse tomorrow with some litigation.
You said that we haven't heard this dog bark yet tonight. No real complaints.
And she took a pass on it, even though she used her rhetoric to say there had been a lot of abuses. I wonder, again, what happens without a projection that gives anybody 270, enough states to give them 270. That gives both campaigns time now to go start scrubbing some of these states and saying, a projection is meaningless. It doesn't allocate any electoral votes. The Trump campaign could decide, you know what, we need Arizona. Let's send 1,000 lawyers to Arizona and figure out if there's something wrong.
Well, look, I will say this, by the way, in Nevada, we're hearing right now that there is the state result is being delayed an hour after a judge has now ruled that some polling locations can stay open later. So we're seeing Nevada's results be delayed, and that's depends on where you are.
The interesting part is getting back to Arizona. I was just talking to the folks on the Trump campaign. They're saying there's over 1 million votes that are out there. That 1 million votes, they're saying, is mostly election day votes. The election day votes are cutting for them 2-1. It was way premature for Fox to call that. I mean, I'm not guaranteeing a Trump victory in Arizona, but we've seen this all night. We saw it in Ohio. We saw it in Georgia. We saw it even in the beginning in Florida, where you see what's happening with the early votes. They're getting count first. But then as the night goes on, those Election Day voters, the Trump voters came out overwhelmingly on Election Day.
And Jim McLaughlin's joining us back here on the desk to talk about this situation in Arizona. You know, it has been curious, so delayed with the call for Florida, but calling Arizona so early, you know, it really boggles the mind.
It's kind of bizarre. And look, I think the networks have to be really careful. I remember back in the day, back in 2000, when Dan Rather went and called Florida for Al Gore, and we all know what happened then. And I think for them to call it this close, where there's still 25% of the vote that's out there, you still got some overseas absentees, which in a place like Arizona, you could get a lot of military ballots. Plus the fact that we're seeing the votes that are being counted now, like they were going through some of the counties, and President Trump was picking up 10,000 votes in like Puma. He's picking up another 20,000 votes here. You're seeing that gap close again, just like we saw it in Iowa, just like we saw it happen in Ohio, just like we saw it happen in Florida. It's been a trend all night.
And we're hearing more about Fox backtracking on this prediction from Arizona. You know, who knows how it's going to go, but at some point now, we're past midnight. Is one of the candidates going to come out?
Well, I was going to say, Jim, the one thing I would say is that if the Trump campaign truly believes that they have something in Arizona, that's a game changer momentum-wise for both campaigns.
Yep.
I would think that they would want to be out there making sure that they get that point across. I have yet heard, I mean, you know, is there a way to figure out if they're going to push back? Because you're right, we just had Jenna Ellis. She's one of their senior legal advisors. For them not to mention that they have a big problem with a state that carries 11 electoral votes would seem to be a problem.
She's a bit of a shrinking violet. No, she's aggressive. I was surprised. What we're having is some vote counting, some careful vote counting that will go at least until tomorrow in a number of states. And we're having networks play, you know, election officials by projecting wins. But we've got the overseas ballots, the military ballots. We have the potential when recanvassing of errors. And we've also got a number of states left on the map that clearly could go either way.
Yeah. Well, a long night still ahead. I mean, you know, eventually we're going to have to go to bed. The question is what? Well,
meaning what? I mean,
not me, but somebody, you know, people are going to have to go to bed. But, you know, we're going to hear from Joe Biden. Donald Trump obviously going to say something in response to that. Mark, what do you expect to hear from Donald Trump tonight?
Well,
I mean, he might mention some of these specific examples you were talking about.
He has more to say.
There have been no newsworthy tweets from the president tonight.
Joe Biden has not won a single state tonight that's surprising, with the possible exception of Arizona, which A, may not be surprising, and B, which he hasn't won. He had a big poll lead there. That's why I didn't put it in the significant six, because like Pennsylvania, his polling lead there was outside the spread in the significant six. The president has more to talk about. He won a lot of states tonight that people did not expect him to win, at least some people.
Better at talking about these types of things.
And he's better at talking about it. And of course, he's won some demographic victories.
Yeah.
He's won the notion of being the anti-establishment candidate. He's won the notion of he did better with older voters in some of these states than anyone thought he would, with Hispanic voters, with African-American voters. So I think the president will relish going second.
Yeah, we won't know the outcome of the victor, but President Trump certainly will sound like more of the victor tonight when all the sound bites are being played tomorrow.
I've not heard back from any of the Biden people working on the speech, but my guess is they're trying to get him to sound as much like a victor as possible.
It's going to be tough. Based on
you know, I actually think this speech is going to sound a lot like the speech that Hillary Clinton's team gave early on election night last time, which is, okay, guys, you know, it's not going to get settled tonight. Go home.
Yep.
They're just having Joe Biden deliver the message.
Yeah.
I think it was Podesta that gave that.
Before we get to Joe Biden's speech, let's turn it over to Emma Reckenberg now, who's with us for some social media and other stories. Emma, great to see you.
That's right. Hey, John, you said that Fox News might have walked it back, again, that call for Arizona, but it could be too little too late, because so many people were quick to call them out for calling a win for Joe Biden so early in Arizona. Social media furious. Just want to point out a few examples here. The Arizona governor, Doug Ducey, saying this, reminding people that it is far too early to call the election in Arizona. Election day votes are not fully reported, and we haven't even started to count early ballots dropped off at the polls. In Arizona, we protected Election Day. Let's count the votes, all the votes, before making declarations. Also, this Trump 2020 senior advisor Jason Miller calling out Fox News on Twitter, saying this, Fox News is a complete outlier in calling Arizona. Other media outlets should not follow suit. There are still 1 million Election Day votes out there waiting to be counted. We pushed our people to vote on Election Day, but now Fox News is trying to invalidate their votes. And even this, Axios reporter Jonathan Swan saying the White House and Trump campaign sources are furious at Fox right now. over, of course, that Arizona call. Fox News was also late calling Florida and Texas for President Trump. NewsMax was first. Just something to keep in mind. Of course, keep it right here for your most up-to-date coverage. John, back to you.
All right, Emma.
John, we
Facts
talked
only.
about that pushback from the Trump campaign on Arizona. There it is.
There it is, right.
That's important. They're now out there officially pushing back. And not just pushing back and saying it's ridiculous, but giving you a reason why, right? Those they think they have a million
votes
election day votes. Whether or not that's true or not, but I think what you need to see from a campaign on either side is that they're contesting it. And the Trump campaign is clearly doing that. Jason Miller is their top communications person. To see him out there shows you that they're not conceding Arizona.
I go back to 2000 and the importance of the Bush campaign on election night going on offense, very much, not just with President Bush's speech, then Governor Bush's speech, but with Jeb Bush as governor, with Katherine Harris, with the legal team, James Baker, they stayed on offense nearly the entire time. And when the Gore campaign tried to stop the military ballots from coming in and being counted, that was their attempt to go on offense, and it backfired badly. And I know, you know this, one of Al Gore's top advisors in this campaign is Ron Klain, the person who, if the vice president wins, will probably be White House Chief of Staff. He was the point person up against James Baker for the Gore campaign. They're well aware of the symbolism of this and the importance of trying to be on offense. It's going to be hard because the president's had a better night, and the president better at offense than Joe Biden. So that is, to me, the big challenge for the Biden campaign. How can they go into tomorrow on roughly equal footing in what is still a contest where no one has won?
We're about to find out what Joe Biden is going to say. We see the motorcade pulling up there now to Delaware, to the podium. And it is going to be incredibly difficult, Jim, for Joe Biden to project this image of strength, to project the image of a winner, not only based on what happened tonight, but he's going to be doing that up against the President of the United States.
Yeah, oh, without a doubt. And you know what? I think he's up past his bedtime right now.
I was going to say, that's,
And I'm looking at the ambulance. I'm just hoping he's not in there. Let's pray, that Joe's okay and everything goes okay tonight. But it's kind of amazing. And you look at the crowd now. You see those crowds when President Trump does his rallies. They're in lines. They're going crazy. They know Joe Biden's coming in right now. They're really, really subdued. I mean, it's just, you don't see the enthusiasm. You just don't see the energy right now.
And they never had much energy and enthusiasm for him to begin with, and now they're second-guessing everything.
You're exactly right. I can only imagine right now what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders are saying right now.
Didn't run liberal enough.
Didn't run liberal
You know what
enough.
the conservatives in the party are saying?
Yep.
You ran too liberal.
Yep, exactly right. And everybody, it's funny. The press loves to talk about civil wars in the Republican Party, but I'm telling you, there's a huge civil war going on right now, and there's going to be a lot of finger pointing for the Democrats.
Well, we knew that when they were already giving cabinet seats. AOC was already giving cabinet seats away for the presidential, for the Biden administration. All right, we're going to check in now as we wait for Joe Biden with Congressman Louis Gohmert from Texas. Congressman, congratulations on your re-election campaign tonight.
Well, thank you. It's deeply humbling to be elected again. The good news is that my opponent yanked in $500,000 from around the country that wasn't used on any of my Republican friends. So it worked out okay. Worked out well, actually.
Well, we saw a lot of money flowing into Texas for the Senate race there, also for some of these House races, similar to what we saw in the last cycle with Beto O'Rourke's race. Will these outside money sources ever learn that Texas can't be bought?
Well, they keep thinking that if they just keep doing the same thing, eventually it'll have a different result. And let me say this for Biden. I know it's past his bedtime, as y'all mentioned, but keep in mind, he was endowed by his, the thing. And so he may be able to do this tonight. We have to wait and see.
Yeah, we will have to wait and see. We're waiting for a lot of things tonight. But Congressman, what do you think is really, let's talk about this. It looks like you might have some more Republican colleagues in the House than it was anticipated early on in the night. What do you think is leading to that sort of success we've seen so far?
Well, I think what you guys were just touching on, and I really enjoyed listening to you. You're quite knowledgeable. And I think it's what you were talking about. They went too liberal. Pennsylvania, they lost Pennsylvania because, and some of the Midwest states, because they were going to get rid of our energy sources and lose jobs to China, and people were just not willing to go there. So it's going to be interesting in the days ahead. But if the Democrats do retain the majority, it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot at stake here. And, you know, we were also talking about what this means for Nancy Pelosi. If she returns to the House with a smaller majority than what she thought, what does this mean for her future as Speaker?
Well, it is interesting, but she's had her chain yanked so many times by the squad, she looks like she's got walking whiplash. And I expect to see a whole lot more of that now. And like you guys are talking about, there's going to be a civil war over which side of the Democratic Party cost them seats and kept them from winning the White House. And it's going to be a very interesting debate among themselves.
Yeah, it will be a fight for sure. Congressman Louis Gohmert, thanks so much. Great to see you, sir.
It's great to see you. Enjoying your coverage.
We appreciate you watching. And you guys hear the horns honking in Delaware. That's the Joe Biden crowd waiting for him to ascend to the podium there. We see somebody walking out on stage. We are waiting, standing by to see what Joe Biden is actually going to say. Not a great story for the former vice president to tell tonight. As we were just... Here we go. We'll listen in. Joe Biden taking the podium now. Let's hear what he has to say.
We knew this was going to go long, but who knew we're going to go into maybe tomorrow morning, maybe even longer. But look, we feel good about where we are. We really do. I'm here to tell you tonight, we believe we're on track to win this election. We knew because of the unprecedented early vote and the mail-in vote that it's going to take a while. We're going to have to be patient until the hard work of tallying the votes is finished. And it ain't over till every vote is counted. Every ballot is counted. But we're feeling good. We're feeling good about where we are. We believe one of the nets has suggested we've already won Arizona, but we're confident about Arizona. That's a turnaround. We also just called it for Minnesota, and we're still in the game in Georgia, although that's not one we expected. And we're feeling real good about Wisconsin and Michigan. And by the way, it's going to take time to count the votes. We're going to win Pennsylvania. I've been talking to folks in Philly, Allegheny County, Scranton, and they're really encouraged by the turnout and what they see. Look, you know, we could know the results as early as tomorrow morning, but it may take a little longer. As I've said all along, it's not my place or Donald Trump's place to declare who's won this election. That's the decision of the American people. But I'm optimistic about this outcome. And I want to thank every one of you who came out and voted in this election. And by the way, Chris Coons and the Democrats, congratulations here in Delaware. Pardon? Hey, John, the Gov, yeah, the whole team, man. You've done a great job. I'm grateful to the poll workers, to our volunteers, our canvassers, everyone who participated in this democratic process. And I'm grateful to all of my supporters here in Delaware and all across the nation. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And folks, you heard me say it before. Every time I walk out of my grandpa's house up in Scranton, he'd yell, "Joey, keep the faith." And my grandma, when she was alive, yelled, "No, Joey, spread it." Keep the faith, guys. We're going to win this. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Your patience is great. Let's walk over here.
It's not what you want to hear. Okay, there's Joe Biden trying to keep the troops inspired. A whole bunch of honking. They do the car rallies. The president does them.
Bedtime for
The
Biden.
people rallies. It's getting a little late for Joe Biden.
Bedtime for Biden.
He's getting a little tired. He said he feels confident about Michigan and Wisconsin. I don't know why. I'm looking at these numbers here in Michigan and Wisconsin. I see the president performing at about the same pace or maybe a little better than he did in 2016. What do you see, Mark?
I have to say, there's one thing about that speech that I think is one of the craziest things I've seen in my covering election nights.
What's that?
He said nothing about policy or issues. The entire speech was about process. It was about how good they feel about states, congratulating Delaware politicians, saying how long the vote would take. He didn't say a single thing about fighting for the middle class, jobs, health care, the pandemic, Donald Trump. I mean, that's how he chose to use his times addressing the American people. I understand that part of the speech. He wants to reassure his supporters they're not giving up because they've had a bad night. But I am stunned that he did not say a single word about the economy, the pandemic, racial justice, anything of substance.
What do you make of that?
I really can't explain it because, I mean...
I can't. I mean, I think you're
how
absolutely
about a paragraph about
but
jobs?
I think what happened is that they had to get him out there to say something.
Yeah.
He didn't want it to be long because he didn't want to ramble on. He knew he was going to... I mean, I think this was contained. Get out there, just say...
How about I'm fighting for you?
I get it. I'm not saying you're right, but I'm just saying I think they were like, look, get up there, say that we're going to go to bed and we keep fighting and we'll see you tomorrow. But I think that's they were containing that. They knew that he wasn't prepared to give a long speech. So
didn't have to be long. He just had to mention why he wanted to be president, maybe.
Yeah, but Mark, it's 12:40 a.m. He's not used to staying up this late.
He probably went to bed at 8 and then woke up for this.
Well, but I'm being serious, though. That I don't think that he was in a position to give an unscripted speech tonight. I think if he was ready to declare victory, he might have salted in.
That was not a victory speech.
No. That
Joe,
was I need to say something so I can go to bed speech.
Placeholder.
Joe, what do you think?
I think the hard truth is that he hasn't been prepared to give an unscripted speech this entire election. And I think, again, it showed in this moment, I think, where the reality belied the punchline. So I think at this point right now, you have a Democratic Party that is honestly deflated. They were not prepared to be sitting here. They thought they were going to be popping champagne at 10 p.m. And now as these numbers come in, it looks as if somehow Trump has built a new coalition. They thought they were going to be able to rebuild the Obama coalition. I think I and many people have said you cannot rebuild the Obama coalition without an Obama on the ballot. It failed 4 years ago. And tonight we're seeing again that the Hispanic coalition just walked out the back door to the Democratic Party.
Let's go ahead and take a look at it. We just heard from Joe Biden. Here's the president tweeting this. I will be making a statement tonight, a big win. Wow. I mean, that's a big statement, Sean Spicer.
Donald Trump doesn't do small things. He does big things, and I expect, to Mark's point, I mean,
is he going to give a acceptance speech? Is he going to a victory
I don't know
speech?
what he's going to give, but it's not going to be quick and to the point. He's going to go on about. I mean, I expect him to get up there and talk about, why he's going to win, how great the vote has been. But this is not going to be what you just saw.
Okay.
Now, my guess is that, in contrast, by the way, I think you're going to see him go downstairs. I'm sure it's going to be in the East Room or somewhere in like that. They'll put a podium down there. He'll dress however many people are there, but there's going to be people. There's going to be excitement. It's going to have a totally different feel than what you just saw.
And it's metaphorically what this entire mismatch between them has been. Joe Biden brings some strengths to this race, asymmetrical, better than the president. The president will inspire his movement with whatever he says. I'm quite confident. Joe Biden was placeholding.
We're going to go to Lee Carter, president of Maslansky and Partners, with us. Lee, good to see you. You just heard from Joe Biden. What'd you make of that?
That did not sound like a confident victory speech, that's for sure. As you guys were saying, it was, it didn't pack a punch. It didn't feel enthusiastic. It didn't feel excited. It seemed to me to be somewhat concerned, and he should be, because this election was supposed to be a sure thing. This election was supposed to be easy. This election was supposed to be his fight for the soul of America, and clearly he hasn't won wholeheartedly that fight. And
Lee, you're a pollster. What are you seeing? I mean, these numbers coming in. I really got a close eye on Michigan right now. I see good things for the president here. What are you seeing in Michigan?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. The Rust Belt states of Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio are all looking very good for the president right now. And I think they all have a lot in common. They want the economy. They want to stay open. They want to live their lives and balance all of that with a need to live safely. And that means safely in our cities. That means safely with COVID. But that means that we should be able to make the decisions for ourselves. The president took his case to the people and he won them over. When you look at some of the voter analysis, you'll see some of those late-breaking decisions that were made over the last 2 weeks were made for Donald Trump. So his visits to those states really paid off.
Absolutely. Lee, thanks so much for joining us. We're going to go to Jessie Jane Duff, a gunnery sergeant for the U.S. Marine Corps, retired, also sitting on the advisory board for Women for Trump and co-chair of the advisory board for Veterans for Trump. Great to see. I want to read you a tweet. The president just tweeted out 1 minute ago, "We are up big, but they are trying to steal the election. We'll never let them do it. Votes cannot be cast after the polls are closed." And then he also put this one out as well. "I will be making a big statement tonight, a big win." Your reaction to what you heard from Joe Biden, your reaction to what we're reading from President Trump right now?
Well, I don't understand what Joe Biden is optimistic about. We're crushing it in Wisconsin. It looks like we've got a strong lead in Michigan, which was already stated. In Western Pennsylvania and the outskirts of Philadelphia are showing definite President Trump support. So this is not a sweep for Joe Biden by any stretch. And the early call of Arizona by Fox News is being called out by the campaign and the White House because over 1 million voters had not been counted yet. They hadn't even, the governor of the state said, "What are you doing? You haven't even counted the people that voted today." So it's quite possible in these rural areas that they already are determined of those millions, 63% of those should be going to Donald Trump. That's what the campaign speculates, that the outstanding votes are going to Trump. I think some of these jumps on their polling, assuming that states are already in Biden's corner, was very unreasonable. You look over down at, and Fox News has been doing this all night. They dragged on Florida. They dragged on Texas, even with Karl Rove sitting on their panel explaining to them that all of these rural areas, you've already got your Democratic votes counted in Dallas and Houston and Austin, for example. But when you start looking at the outliers, he goes, the rest of your votes are going to be Republican. And sure enough, Donald Trump won. But I'm very, very optimistic that we're going to see a big win by the president. But this is going to be painful because Joe Biden obviously has his hands in the cookie jar. I suspect that there's a lot of shenanigans going on in Pennsylvania. We saw it earlier today that a statewide poll watcher wasn't even allowed into the polling areas. You just have to wonder. It makes people like myself very skeptical, and we've even heard about boxes being locked up in Fairfax County, Virginia, and they will resume counting tomorrow, and we won't get results till Friday. This isn't how elections are supposed to be done. They do this once every 4 years. Why can't they do it right?
Okay. Jessie Jane Duff, great to hear from you. Thank you so much. We're going to bring you back out here to the panel here for a second. I want to dig a little deeper into Michigan here because I think it's a really big deal. Looking at some of these particular counties, I think the president seems to be overperforming in Wayne County, where Detroit is, not doing nearly as bad as he did 4 years ago. In Kent County, where Grand Rapids is, I keep coming back to this. Kent County, the president only won by 3 points in 2016. Right now, he's up by 11 over Joe Biden with 60% reporting. He won Michigan last time, Sean. I mean,
he won by 10,000 votes. He's got a 300,000 plus vote lead right now with 60% in. Right. Again, it's going to depend on what's out there. That's big. And then if you move over to Wisconsin West, he's 82% in. He's sitting on a 51.7% lead right now. Here's the interesting thing. We talked about this earlier tonight. He's got 1.3 million votes, 1.35 million votes in the bank. Last time he won Wisconsin with 1.4, meaning that he's growing that vote in Wisconsin. That's important, right? So again, we get back to, whether or not it's just maintaining, but this shows growth. And you don't even have the whole state coming in yet. Yeah. This shows that he's exceeding that vote. The Biden campaign is behind where they were last time. So, I mean, this is good for Wisconsin for him, and he's definitely faring much better in Wisconsin.
And let me just remind our viewers, if the president takes North Carolina, and then he takes Michigan and Wisconsin, with both right now look pretty good, he doesn't even need to win Pennsylvania.
Correct.
He won't need Pennsylvania, and he can afford. I mean, he's going to lose Arizona. It looks like
10 electoral votes apiece.
Yeah.
Right. So
Well, no, Pennsylvania has more.
16. Michigan is worse.
I mean, sorry, Pennsylvania's 20, right?
Yeah, right.
But then Michigan and Wisconsin are
So,
both
I mean,
10s.
Well, Michigan
to
16.
take
16,
Pennsylvania
my
out of
God,
the
I'm sorry,
equation.
it's the 1 a.m. math.
Yeah. I mean, that
I was
means
talking, I meant Minnesota.
It's enough. It's enough. It's enough.
Yeah,
If he wins just those
he's lost
two.
Minnesota. Let's say he's lost Arizona because it looks like it. But he could still lose Pennsylvania if he takes Wisconsin and Michigan and still win the election. That has changed. The whole dynamic, the whole landscape has now changed.
I mean,
the way this looks. What do you think?
Well, and
we're
Nevada's
sitting-
just starting to come in now after that judge halted the
I mean,
state right
I think you have to say at this point, if President Trump is getting ready to address the nation, that I think that he needs to know, and that the supporters need to understand that if President Trump gets a second term, it was delivered by black and brown voters across this country.
Couldn't agree more.
If you're talking about looking at 64% of white non-college educated voters were basically the coalition beneath President Trump's wins 4 years ago. You know, you look at a place like Wisconsin, if, you know, obviously exit polls are not perfect, but you're looking at that margin's gone from 64, we're looking at 54% in Wisconsin. You're looking at 57% of non-white or white non-college educated individuals. So where do you make up that difference? Now you start talking about 36% of Hispanic voters in Ohio in exit polling, 33%. I mean, 41%.
That's the narrative.
41% of Hispanic voters in exit polling saying they voted for President Trump in Michigan. I mean, when you start looking at numbers like that, you have basically taken a scalpel or even a bulldozer to the face of American politics. And if we don't start having that conversation as a party, as the GOP, to understand what just happened, right, that President Trump passed the First Step Act and that these black and brown voters across this nation gave President Trump a second chance to get the job done.
To change the dynamics. I mean, just Josh Hawley here, the senator, saying we are a working class party now. That's the future. That's how the president is changing the coalition of voters for the Republican Party. It's really interesting to see.
The president's put out another tweet so far. He says, we're up big, but they're trying to steal the election. We'll never let them do it. Votes cannot be cast after the polls are closed.
Right.
I think the president's got to be careful on this. The president's got a good narrative going in. Joe's absolutely right. There's a lot of good news for the president coming in, especially from Wisconsin and Michigan. I think to start to jump ahead this early and it is probably not the best place for him to be. They've got a lot of good news coming in from these other states. Before they start changing the narrative, ride with the tide right now. Talk about the good news that's happening.
Yeah. Here's a scenario here for the Biden campaign. We just talked about how Trump can win. Here is Biden's campaign win scenario. Pennsylvania lose or decide later. Biden would need to win Arizona, which looks like he will, Nevada, Michigan, which is not looking great, Minnesota, which he'll take, Wisconsin, not looking great, Nebraska, 2, I haven't paid enough attention to, Maine, he'll probably get.
And well, it's Maine 2,
Maine 2, yeah.
Oh, is that Maine 2?
Just like one congressional district.
Okay.
Both of which you won last time, Nebraska 2 and Maine.
So that's, I mean, but look, you can pick that apart, Mark Halperin, real easily.
Well, I mean, the weak links there for that would be Wisconsin and Michigan.
Yep.
We don't know about Arizona and the
Nevada.
individual, and maybe Nevada too, but we don't know about those individual districts. But, you know, now we're back to potentially flipping the script here. We've gone weeks, months really, with the press saying this is all about can the president find a path. Now, if the president wins one of these big states, if the president wins Pennsylvania, if he wins Michigan, if he wins Wisconsin, now we're back to saying, does Joe Biden have a path? Does Joe Biden have the ability to run the table on every state he needs to win to stop the president from getting to 270? We're not quite there yet, but we're on the precipice of that potentially.
And North Carolina, you know, we got to say here real quick. I just want to give you it's 95% reported here, and you've got the president up by about 80,000 votes. North Carolina still hasn't been called yet, but that's a close
And Georgia.
And Georgia is nerve-wracking too.
Yeah.
That's a scary one.
Yeah. Well, look, if the president ends up losing Georgia before, again, my significant 6, no replacement. Now there is a replacement potentially for Georgia.
Yeah.
If he won Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, he replaces Georgia. He can still win.
Well, look, I know that North Carolina still has some, but they literally are reporting every precinct is in. The president does have a point and change lead right now. It is roughly 83,000 votes right now. But there is, you know, obviously there's a lot of mail that's still out there. But the president's in a good place when it comes to that. The interesting thing that's really interesting to me about this is that you have just shy of a point that Joe Jorgensen, the Libertarian, took. This could
Yeah.
be crucial in a state like that.
Yeah. All right, it is 1 o'clock in the morning here on the East Coast. We're going to reset. Our special election coverage continues right now. Just that fast, we reset it all. Dramatic developments on this election night. Welcome back. I'm Rob Schmidt. We just heard from the former Vice President Joe Biden. We're waiting to hear from the president any minute now, who's been tweeting. He seems pretty motivated at this late hour. Joe Biden just gave kind of a bizarre speech where he basically just talked about how they still feel good, even though it's been a bit of a weird night for the Democrats. I think they thought they had this in the bag. We're going to go to NewsMax's White House correspondent Emerald Robinson, who is standing by live at the White House tonight. Emerald, what are you hearing?
Okay. Well, look, hearing some very interesting things. First off, you did mention that the president's going to be making a statement. He tweeted that out. We're not sure on exactly what time that's going to be. The White House hasn't clarified on that front. Now, to talk about how they're feeling regarding what's happening, you all have been talking a lot about Michigan and Wisconsin. Of course, Joe Biden came out and gave an address, and he expressed confidence for his campaign in Wisconsin and Michigan. But look, I talked to someone in the Trump war room, and they're feeling really, really good about Wisconsin and Michigan. Now, what they are upset about is what they think was a premature call on Arizona, as there's still some votes out there. In fact, overall, they've been a little disconcerted with some of the calls throughout the night, saying that they've been premature when they were going for Biden and maybe lagging when it came to the states the president has won. So that's what we're hearing right now. Of course, still expressing optimism, but I'll tell you, a lot of the staffers are gathered around, if you know the press office, which Sean knows very well, they're gathered around watching the TVs, very nervously watching them and looking at them. And, you know, a lot of anticipation here. Now, also, Sean mentioned that the president had tweeted about, you know, saying that the Democrats are trying to steal the election. Twitter flagged that pretty quickly, Sean. They've already censored that on the president, saying that it's possibly misleading content.
I'm sure they did. They're looking to jump on him. Absolutely. All right, Emerald, thank you so much. We appreciate it. All right, we're going to take a look now at the national vote count. Let's take a look at the Electoral College, see how things are shaping up right now. You've got the president at 210, Joe Biden at 214. And look at the votes so far, 61 to 63 million. On another year, that would be all of them. And there's still a lot more to count. This is a huge, huge election. A lot of people out there voting, a lot of votes yet to be counted on this bizarre year of 2020. We can take a look at the Senate balance of power here for a second. The Republicans have done a pretty good job tonight of holding on and showing the Democrats how to waste a tremendous amount of money on Senate races that they just couldn't take. You know what I mean, Joe? I mean, you've had, what was that, the one in Kentucky trying to get Mitch McConnell out of there? That didn't work.
She spent over $80 million. You're talking about down in South Carolina, Jamie Harrison raised $57 million in the last quarter alone, over $100 million spent. I mean, if you really want to break it down, Democrats in many ways found new ways to make the same mistakes they made 4 years ago, spending boatloads of money in places they had no business trying to spend money. I bet you right now there's somebody kicking themselves wishing they had a few $1 million pumped into Michigan, a few $1 million pumped into North Carolina. So again, Democrats, when you start talking about greed and hubris ruling the day, I think what comes down to it is them assuming that all people were going to vote the way they said they were going to vote, and not actually based on the policies that were impacting people's lives, because those 7 million jobs were not a figment of people's imaginations, and that extra money they were getting was not crumbs, as Nancy Pelosi called them.
Great point. Looking at the total votes here, 61 million to 63 million right now, a little less than 2 million dividing them. We're going to go over to the big board, and we've got maybe the favorite state of the night to talk about, North Carolina. Very close, gentlemen.
Rob, this is one of the biggest stories of the entire election, and it was foreshadowed by the president's campaign 4 years ago when they said, we can only win a re-election if we get more votes than we got 4 years ago. They set out to find, register, and get to the polls people who didn't vote for Donald Trump 4 years ago. So, Joe Biden tonight, approximately 2.6 million votes. Hillary Clinton, 4 years ago, got 2.1 million, 500,000 more votes from the Democrat to Democrat. Seems like that'd be enough to win. No. President, 2.7 compared to 2.3 last time. He found 400,000 more votes than he did 4 years ago. That's not an accident. It was the centerpiece of how the president's team thought he could win re-election.
Well, and this is important not just for the president, but obviously for control of power of the Senate. The idea that Tom Tillis was facing that strong challenge from Cal Cunningham.
Absolutely.
So North Carolina was battleground for a lot. And I think the idea that it's trending the way it is good news for the president. It's good news for Mitch McConnell and Senate Republicans. But this is, again, I mean, you look at that. It's not just the number. He's over 50%. The president won 9 states, and Hillary Clinton won 6 states by a plurality, not a majority. These numbers are really important. The idea that the Green Party candidate is down so low and that the Libertarian candidate is down below 1%. You're seeing that all over. The president actually surged in many cases in 2016. The Libertarian candidate became the place where Republicans who weren't comfortable with Donald Trump parked their vote. This time, they knew what was at stake. That's putting him over the 50% mark.
They didn't throw the vote away.
That's right.
Any chance we could put up a Senate map? Because there's some developments there. In Iowa, the Republican incumbent Joni Ernst has been declared the winner of that race. Right now, Democrats have picked up a seat in Arizona. They picked up a seat in Colorado. They've lost a seat in Alabama. They may end up losing a seat in Michigan.
Yeah.
Democrats are going to be hard-pressed to pick up majority control. In Georgia, there were 2 races. One is probably not going to a runoff. The Republicans will hold the seat. Maine, we still don't know, but Susan Collins is currently ahead. That was a Republican potential pickup, and we talked about North Carolina. So right now, and then there were a bunch of things, South Carolina, Kansas, Alaska, where Democrats talked about winning. At this point, I think it's mathematically possible for Democrats to win the majority, but I don't think it's likely. And of course, if the president wins, they'll need to pick up a net 4. That's not possible right now.
And that Michigan seat, we've talked about it all night. Yeah. John James is running ahead, and there's no sign right now that there's enough there for the Democrat incumbent, Senator Gary Peters, to do what's necessary to overcome them. That's a big, huge pickup. It makes the Senate Republicans sleep a lot easier knowing that there's less of a chance. Senator Susan Collins in Maine was behind big time. It looks like she's got a good chance of pulling this out tonight. But as Mark said, in Iowa, Joni Ernst was behind a couple weeks ago. She really pulled out a strong win tonight. This is a big deal because, again, and the last thing I'll say is in Georgia, that other special election where you have Senator Kelly Loeffler, who was appointed to the seat in a 3-way runoff, she apparently is going to advance with the Democrat. That makes Republicans probably feel a lot easier. Either one of them, I think her or Congressman Doug Collins could have kept that seat. But I think that the National Republican Senatorial Committee feels really good that they bet on her.
So let's run the math. If Joe Biden wins, they need to net 3. So right now, they've netted 1. So they'd need to win 2 more. The only way they can do that is they can win amongst Maine, North Carolina, and the other Georgia seat. That's all that's left on the board. They'd have to win 2 of those 3.
And by the way, that other Georgia seat,
Georgia
seat's going to a runoff, which means that they're not going to have that seat going into January, right? So that's going to be a special election. That's right now, there's no way that election is getting decided tonight. It's automatically going in to a special election that will be decided in January.
You know what's an interesting storyline? Imagine a race where the president needs Michigan to win, and a black Republican named John James pulls him over the edge in Michigan, saves the day. Joe, talk about that storyline, what that would mean for the Republican Party. And all of a sudden you have a star in John James.
Well, look,
you have a star, John James.
Yeah,
already.
well, I mean, John James already been a star. I think, again, you have to go back to the fact Latinos for Trump, black voices for Trump, the amount of work that was done. They were mocked practically by every person in the media. The running joke became that, it wasn't black outreach, it was black insults. And I think the reality is Democrats got caught daydreaming. They got caught with their hand in the cookie jar. And Joe Biden basically went out and told all black people, if you support Donald Trump, you ain't black. And I think America came back with a resounding, you ain't Scranton. Because apparently he couldn't carry Scranton, and he certainly doesn't look like he's carrying America right now based on these numbers if they hold.
Such an unforced error.
I will say this. I've been doing this a long time. What Joe said is spot on. You got Joe, Jack Brewer, Paris Denard, Bruce Lavelle, all of these folks that went out there and said, hey, we're taking this message to these cities. Everyone sort of went, aha, in the mainstream media, right? We've heard this before. I've never seen an organized effort like I did with Black Voices for Trump, Katrina Pearson, so many of these other folks that really went down and engaged in a way that A, no campaign, and B, the Republican Party hasn't done before. And I think this is going to be one of those lessons after this election that shows, hey, look what happens when you actually engage in these communities. When you show up and stop talking about it, this is what can happen.
President's his own worst enemy going around talking about how he's best president for Black Americans since Lincoln. He doesn't need to say that. But the press covers alleged voter suppression. They cover the mocking the president for Lincoln.
Right.
What they don't cover is, I say again, school choice, criminal justice reform, funding of historically black universities and colleges. These are all things that are real.
They think Americans are stupid.
They're all real.
They're not. And they think if they ignore a story, it doesn't actually happen. It's a great point. We want to go right now to Dick Morris, a great political strategist. You were ready to call this beast at 8 o'clock tonight for President Trump. I bet you're feeling pretty good right now, Dick.
Yeah, well, I am if they would finally count the votes, and they'll come out the way I said. What's going on now is a head fake by the Biden and the Democratic Party. They're trying to establish the idea that Biden won, or at least it's a completely tight race. Nobody could possibly tell who won. So that when they then litigate it and they are trying to throw out votes or trying to get votes in that shouldn't get in, it just looks like they're reaffirming what everybody knows, which is that Biden did very well. The fact of the matter is Biden fell apart. The only state that he seems to have recovered somewhat in is Arizona, and we don't know about that. But I just did the stats. It's incredible. He's 300,000 votes behind in Michigan, 120,000 in Wisconsin, and 750,000 in Pennsylvania. Wow. And he has to win 2 of those 3 states to be elected president. So obviously he's losing. And the headline should be Donald Trump is winning. But that doesn't permit the lawsuit to go ahead with equality. It means that people will think that Trump is trying to overturn the election. And it's to create that perception. That's why the networks and Fox have not called this race in these states, because they want to create the impression that there is no winner of this race, so that Biden is able to litigate till his heart's content.
Yeah. Great stuff. Dick Morris, thank you. Let's come back here just for 1 second. He just talked about Pennsylvania. You look at the numbers, 65% reporting the president has a pretty handsome, almost 700,000 vote lead out of 4.6 million voters. What do you think happens in Pennsylvania, Mark?
Philadelphia is unique in America in the place it plays in the imagination of, and the reality, but in the imagination of Republicans regarding stealing votes. That's just the president's been talking about it on the campaign trail for a long time. So you now have a bad mix of the president being rhetorically, openly suspicious about Philadelphia, and now the city of Philadelphia doing something that, as best I know, no other jurisdiction in the country did tonight.
I'm looking at Philadelphia County right here, and it says about half of it's reported, and Biden has 160,000 vote lead. So let's double that. That gives Biden another 160,000 votes. The president's up by 700,000. That doesn't do it.
I do not know the president as well as Sean does, but I guarantee you that if the president is not declared the winner of Pennsylvania, he will never accept that there wasn't cheating by the mayor. Never will accept it.
What do you think, Sean? That's a big statement.
I think there's some merit to what Mark is saying.
He won.
But I think, look, I don't know how you can just randomly stop counting the votes without an explanation and not think that there's going to be a problem. This is, again, where, the media doesn't seem to think that anyone thinks that's a problem. That in the middle of an election night, you stop counting votes in one of the biggest cities of the biggest swing state, and no one sort of...
Am I right? There's nothing like maybe Chicago would be considered like
But I'm looking at this, guys. You're not going to... I don't see him getting there. I'm looking at all of these big counties and how much Joe Biden's ahead by.
Well, that's why they're
going to
put
it together. It's like I can't see them getting another 300,000-400,000 at the most, and they need 7.
How many, in the minds of the president's supporters, the dialogue will go like this. How many votes did Joe Biden eventually get out of Philadelphia? Answer, how many did he need?
Yeah.
That's the dialogue. And and it's going to be a mess.
I mean, he can potentially get another 250,000 out of Philadelphia County, and then a couple other counties are going to give him another maybe 100,000, and then that's it. Everything else is red.
So
and he doesn't get there. In my estimation, I'm no expert, but I mean, you see the same map.
What's the total vote right now in Pennsylvania?
Pennsylvania was what, 4.6 million? Let me get back here. Hang on a second.
No, how many-
4.6 million total votes reported. Trump's up 56 to 42%.
Okay, so last time you had about 5.8 million casts in Pennsylvania among the two major candidates, and then obviously another 200,000. So, I mean, you're in the ballpark.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the...
I guarantee you the president's super happy about how the night's gone. I also guarantee you he is super annoyed at the mayor, but also at the press. The lack of projections is infuriating.
Here's a tweet from Travis Tritt. I believe he's a country music star. I think I know who that is. No matter what the final results are tonight, one thing is extremely clear, says Travis. Fox News can no longer claim to be fair and balanced network they once were. There are a lot of bias hacks there now, and a ton of folks are noticing. It's now Newsmax for me for election results. Travis Tritt.
Thanks to all you all.
There you go. That's a big statement. There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of animosity towards Fox tonight. People are wondering what's going on over there. Why were they so quick to call Arizona for Joe Biden? And they sat on Ohio. They sat on Florida.
Well, I think when you go down and look at what Newsmax has done, we've been very deliberative of how we've called this thing, and I think we've been right every time. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing.
And transparent, which is what the American people want across the spectrum.
When you read out the numbers, see, this is the difference. Mark talked about this earlier before. We're reading out what the election results are. This is how many votes have been cast. Here's what's left out, and here's what we think. These other folks are talking about projections. Yeah. That's a big difference. They're guessing what they think is left. Yeah. I think that's what people get annoyed at. You saw this in Virginia. We talked about this. 701 calling Virginia. Now, he ended up winning, but it certainly wasn't a kind of state that you call it 701 again.
After 2000, you need to go?
I got it. Real quick. Right. I get yelled at, you know, they get mad at me.
I was going to tell a story about the past.
Well, we're going to get to your story in just a second. I think we're going to be here for a while, frankly. Let's go to Amy Tarkanian. She's a former Nevada State GOP chairwoman and a Republican strategist. Yours is an interesting state on this evening. Amy, good to see you. What are you seeing in the state of Nevada?
Well, we've had a slow roll of our election numbers coming in, and the two counties that are the most important are Washoe, which is Reno, and Clark, which is Las Vegas. Yeah. Now, Clark County actually consists of about 71% of our entire state's vote count. And as those numbers are coming in, it's not looking good for President Trump, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. He's down about 74,000 votes in Clark County and down about 14,000 in Washoe. The votes in the rurals tend to go pretty red, but they are not going to be enough, unfortunately, I don't think, to make up for those two counties.
Well, I don't suspect he's going to need Nevada. No offense to Nevadans. But we were just talking about Pennsylvania and the obscure situation there. They've stopped counting votes. The president has a nice lead, 700,000 votes or so. What do you think happens?
Well, that's a very interesting scenario, because I don't understand how, one, you can allow ballots to still come in after Election Day that aren't postmarked. Here in Nevada, they at least have to be postmarked, and they have up to a week to be counted and tabulated. I don't see how Pennsylvania can get away with something like that. That seems criminal to me. It seems almost like, why even have a deadline at all? And then the fact that their poll watchers and ballot counters went home, that's absurd.
It is absurd. It begs a lot of questions about, did they just get, I mean, who makes that call? I have no idea. Amy, great to talk to you. Thank you so much. We're going to come back out here just for a second. Mark, she said that they don't have to be postmarked in Pennsylvania. Is that accurate, that they can be counted even if they're not postmarked Election Day or before?
Yeah, it's a discretionary thing. And, the Supreme Court still is out there looming. One of the things that happened in Pennsylvania was the Supreme Court twice took a pass on addressing the question of what happens to ballots that come in after Election Day. Yeah. And the state election administrator told all the counties, anything that comes in after Election Day, we're going to count it, but we're going to segregate it. Yeah. And this is now one area where there will be litigation, even though Jen Ellis did not mention it. The president's team is going to go back to the Supreme Court. And remember, it's not the same Supreme Court that ruled the two previous times declined to hear the case. It's now a Supreme Court that has Justice Barrett on it, and that could end up deciding the election, even if it's not done in any nefarious way. Her judgment may be that that's not right. And just to be clear, the principle is not about whether ballots should count or not. It's about who makes the decision. Is it election administrators or is it the state legislature?
Yeah, and I don't think the president's going to need much help. I mean, I'm looking at these numbers. Tom, we were just nerding it up, looking at all the numbers together during the break. What are you seeing?
Yeah, look, I agree with Mark. This is where you're going to start to see the blood sport of the legal challenges start to take place, because it's not just whether it's the legislature or it's an election official. In the state of Pennsylvania, it's also activist courts. You've got activist courts who have changed the rules here sort of midstream, and so you're starting to see the beginnings of what could be a protracted legal battle, not only in the city of Philadelphia, but also with respect to these ballots that are not postmarked, because ordinarily everything needs to be postmarked, and you also have to have signature requirements.
Well, not necessarily. It's up to each state to set its own rules, but the Constitution is clear. The establishment of these rules is left up to the state legislatures, not the state courts, not administrators. And that position, I believe, if it does get taken up by the court, the president will win that case.
Interesting. Let's talk, just for a second, let's talk about Michigan, because there's more than one really, really important, interesting state right now. Michigan is another one the president could steal.
Yeah, Michigan, the president is doing much, much better than I thought that he would end up doing in some of these suburban Detroit counties. And you win these states in the suburbs. The Republicans don't win in the cities; they win in the suburbs. And we had been hearing for weeks that the president was going to get crushed in the suburbs. And if you look in the suburbs of Lansing, the president right now in two of those counties, Clinton County and Eaton County, he's doing better. He's pretty even. In another outside of Detroit, he's doing well in 2 or 3 of those counties. I'd also like to point out in Wisconsin, the president is winning the suburbs of Milwaukee. And this is really, really important, especially after the riots in Kenosha, after everything that we have seen, to win suburban Milwaukee and to do better than expected in a couple of the counties outside of Madison really bodes well for the president to be able to pick up Wisconsin again.
And we don't know why those people voted the way they did, but I can tell you some things they voted for in the past when they were electing Scott Walker governor, and he was winning those areas, those suburban areas. Judges, taxes, regulation, law and order. Those were all really strong issues for Scott Walker. He wasn't elected that long ago.
Right. I mean, just look at the Kenosha number, and I can't remember now what he did, but it wasn't nearly. He didn't perform like this in 2016. I think he might have even lost Kenosha County, but don't hold me to that. But the president, with 55% in Kenosha County, where all those riots just tore that place up, the president up by 23 points. With more than half of the vote reported.
And
at
again,
this time.
tens of thousands of people just showed up to a rally. Every single one of those people was an ambassador for this campaign. And the door-to-door and the ground game, the person-to-person connection that Trump voters were making with their friends and neighbors, it really did make a difference tonight.
More powerful than Lady Gaga, in your view.
I would say so. I don't think they care much about Lady Gaga in Kenosha, Wisconsin.
Right now, if you look at all the states that are in play, you'd have to say the president's the favorite to win. Yeah. The New York Times continues to say they think Joe Biden's the favorite in Georgia. I don't see how they're making that judgment. But right now, if you're Joe Biden's team, you've got to figure out a strategy. Are you going to start doing legal appeals? Where are you going to find the votes?
And to Sean's earlier point, now is the time where you make sure your lawyers are starting to keep their eyes on these ballots, particularly in places like Philadelphia, where they could try and run up the score, but also in Atlanta as well. You need to make sure that these ballots are being impounded if they're not being counted, and you're keeping track of what's going on.
And remember, we already had.
I got to go. Hang on one second. I got to go to Tom Del Beccaro, former chairman of the California GOP and author of The Divided Era. Hey, Tom, good to talk to you again. Obviously, we know what happened in California tonight, but I wanted to get your opinion on the rest of the country. More importantly, these critical states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, these same states for the president. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I think all of you are doing a great job. Look, this is coming down now to 3 states in my view, because he's going to win Michigan, and he's got John James to thank him for doing that. Yeah. So it leaves open Pennsylvania, as you've been discussing. It leaves open Wisconsin, and in my view, it leaves open Nevada. And in order to win, Biden has to sweep those states. And he's not going to be able to do that in Wisconsin. Wisconsin is right now about 120,000 votes shy of its 2016 total, yet Trump's got a 110,000 lead. which would mean Joe Biden would have to basically get all the rest of the votes in the 84, I think it's at 84%. He would have to get the remaining votes really to pull it out. That's not likely. So to me, if Trump wins Wisconsin, he doesn't even need Pennsylvania at this point, because I got him at 264. He's going to win Georgia. He's going to win North Carolina, and he won Montana.
It's unbelievable. I mean, how the map has changed. I mean, we started tonight by saying he had to win North Carolina, and he clearly had to win Pennsylvania. And it's just so crazy to see how everything can change in such a short period of time.
Yeah, and I want to talk about the past polling that they and Sean Spicer's been great about this. They are focused on 2016 or 2012 models.
Yep.
That is not what happened on the ground. The Republicans picked up 200,000 net gain in registration in Pennsylvania, 250,000 in North Carolina, similar numbers in Florida. And so they worked the ground game. The story of this election is the Democrats literally phoned it in when Republicans knocked on doors.
It's so true, Tom. I mean, you watched this whole thing come down, and it was, you heard the stories about 2016 and Hillary running a lazy campaign. And then they put Joe Biden up there, and I mean, you feel kind of bad. I don't think he had the energy, even if he wanted to do it. Hillary could have probably done it. But when you don't work as hard, and I said this, I felt it every day. I said, usually when it comes in any kind of competition, the person that's fighting harder, the person that wants it more, usually wins. It was only this time where everybody said, it doesn't matter that Trump's killing himself to win this election. Joe Biden's just going to win it. And it was just hard to believe.
And think about what Mark said earlier about switching from Ohio and going to Michigan. Who knows how valuable that's going to be? But Trump had that energy that you're describing to do that sort of thing. And at the very end of election, there is bandwagoning. There are people who want to vote with the winner. And because Trump had that winner look about him that whole time, that's why you saw polls move, I think, slightly in the end. And you guys talked earlier tonight about being within a field goal. I think that matters. And the story of this election will be the Republican effort, even though we're so divided. Imagine a country that would vote for a guy like Joe Biden, who clearly can't do the job. He doesn't have the energy to do that, and yet we're still so close.
Yeah, it is something else. Tom Delbacaro, great to talk to you again, sir.
All right, great seeing you, Rob.
All right, bringing it back out here. Tom, talk a little bit about energy in this race, because, I mean, that seems like it was everything. I mean, the president just worked so much harder. Now, it's not called yet, but that's how we get to this situation we're in tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, let's start off where we started today to begin with, which was the left-wing media was telling everybody you're going to be in bed by 10 o'clock, that it's over. And these are the people who basically were running Joe Biden's campaign for him. Joe Biden, I've been saying this for 6 months, has been completely incidental to his own campaign because of big tech, because of the left-wing press. And Donald Trump has developed a movement, and he's reached out and he's talked to people, he's touched people. Think about the tens of thousands of people every day that he was seeing along the campaign trail. And that is infectious. Yeah. People want to see that level of activity when they want somebody. You have to ask for the vote. Yeah. And Donald Trump asked for the vote. Joe Biden sat in the basement for the last 6 months.
That's a great point. Hey, I promised the numbers on Kenosha County. I wanted to get them. The president won Kenosha County in Wisconsin. This is a very interesting county. He won it by 0.3% in 2016. Right now, with more than half of the precincts reporting in that county, he is up by 24 points. That is a massive swing.
And go ahead. I'm sorry, and remember, Donald Trump came to Kenosha after the riots. Right. And what did he do? He offered small business assistance. He met with the law enforcement. He met with the small business owners. He said, how are we going to rebuild your community? Joe Biden didn't do that. Joe Biden did a photo op at a black church and intimated that our police officers were racists and went home. So
Absolutely.
They responded to that.
Yeah. It's interesting. We're going to go to a tweet right now from Miranda Devine, one that we thought was interesting, wanted to read to you. Dick Morris on NewsMax with the most astute analysis. Biden has fallen apart for 300,000 behind in Michigan, 750,000 behind in Pennsylvania. Dems and media allies want to create the impression there is no winner of this race so they can litigate. It looks like they're just reaffirming. And now we're going to go to Steve Sanchez, syndicated radio host at KDWN in Las Vegas. Good to see you, Steve. A little earlier over where you are. What are your thoughts on what we're seeing right now as this evolves? It's getting very interesting.
It definitely is. I just took a break from my live radio show. We've been covering election coverage. We'll be here till midnight Pacific time. And, you know, right now in Nevada, it's still early, 7% reporting right now. And, you know, there's a slight lead for the president at this point, but there's still a lot to go, a lot of counting. It's an early night here in Nevada, but the enthusiasm's through the roof, I'll tell you that.
Absolutely. What do you make of what we're seeing? You know, I think a lot of Democrats thought that they were going to rebuild the blue wall, that they were going to pick Joe Biden, who's a scrappy kid from, you know, Scranton, Pennsylvania, and they were going to rebuild that blue wall. How's that going?
Well, they got a rude awakening. I've been saying this for months on my show. The enthusiasm for this president from the Latinos, from the black community, from everyday hardworking Americans, they don't want 47 years in Washington, D.C. running the country. And I think it's pretty clear. Now, of course, Democrats are doing well in certain areas. That's expected. But this blue wave, everybody's in bed by 10 o'clock, is not happening. And I think they're worried, and they should be, because I happen to believe in my gut that President Trump is going to pull this one off.
Absolutely. Steve, in Las Vegas for us, great to talk to you. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
We're going to go now to Miranda Devine. We just read her tweet. I love reading your columns. Thanks for joining us here on NewsMax tonight. What do you make of the situation here as we pull your tweet back up? We just read it, but give us your take on the evening.
Sorry, I've almost lost you there. Can you still hear me?
Yes, I have you. I just wanted to get your take on what we're seeing tonight.
Yeah. Look, it's no surprise that the Democrats and their media allies would deny Donald Trump the pleasure of winning tonight and also deny his supporters the pleasure. So, of course, they're going to make it difficult for him to, you know, declare victory, maybe for a few days. But who cares? I mean, a win is a win. And it looks pretty obvious. You know, I'm told that Michigan and Wisconsin are good for the president, Pennsylvania as well. I mean, he doesn't, even if he gets Michigan and Wisconsin, he doesn't need Pennsylvania, he doesn't need Arizona, but I'm told that Pennsylvania is good for him, and that is icing on the cake. The fact is that tonight, when you had, Dick Morris was spot on when he said that Joe Biden went out for that really absurd, surreal midnight drive-in honking car routine for, you know, a few seconds up on stage with his wife, you know, dragging him around as usual. It's ridiculous, but it's part of this, what Dick Morris calls a head fake. And that's what it is. It's about pretending that, in fact, the president is not ahead, and that you know, somehow
it's all burning down around you. I wanted to ask you real quick, Miranda, if I could, if you can still hear me. I just want to ask you, living in New York, I think we're going to see, if the president does take this election, what do you expect to see in our major cities over the next few days?
Well, look, riots, but it's interesting. Tonight's been quite quiet, and the NYPD has done this fantastic cordon around Trump Tower with their biggest trucks to keep it safe, which is fabulous.
Right.
But look, there hasn't been a lot of rioting, and I think that part of the very somber and you know, among all the networks and not calling it for Donald Trump and being very slow on, say, Florida and Ohio may be to do with the fact that they've had security briefings saying be ultra cautious, ultra responsible, because we don't want to cause riots. Because the sore losers are the Democrat supporters. It's not Republican supporters or Trump supporters that are going to be rioting.
Yeah, no, you're right. My cousin's been running around in D.C. He's a college kid, bored, went down to Black Lives Matter Plaza. He said they're tearing it up. New York might be quiet, but D.C., it would appear, is not tonight. Miranda, great to talk to you.
You too.
All right, back out here with the panel, and we're going to talk a little bit more about Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
can I just
Heather.
comment on that for a second? Times Square tonight, for example, here in New York City, it was all boarded up.
The whole
What
city.
does this say about where we are as a country? That we are boarding up our cities, whether it's New York or parts of Washington, D.C., because of rioting that is expected. And there were people showing up there. You call it Black Lives Matter Square, right? It's
Right.
Lafayette Park
Yep.
to many Americans
Yep.
and has been for a very, very long time. Just because the mayor calls it something does not make it that.
But that's who
In
was
the
there. I'm
meantime-
just indicating who was
you know,
there.
I look at those businesses on that 16th Street, right as you go up to the White House. The hotels closed down. Lots and lots of people out of work. This is a travesty that
embarrassing.
this has happened to our country. And the president is exactly right when he talks about New York City and how disgraceful it is, how things have shut down.
Real quick, I just want to tell you guys, Joe Biden's campaign has called a lid for the evening. We're not going to be hearing from him. So
Well, that's
he's,
late.
He's in bed. He's
that's
very late. Yes.
Two couple things.
Go ahead.
First of all, to Heather's point, I mean, you have major cities in the United States boarded up. In New York City, you have police officers in every corner. Why? It's not because the Trump supporters are going nuts if Biden wins. It's because the Biden supporters and the folks on the left were going to go nuts if President Trump won again. And they were going to commit acts of violence and destruction in major cities. Why is that not being talked about as a narrative? This is not right-wing violence and destruction that's going on. Secondly, to totally switch gears, Michigan, I think, sorry, that's why we're
That
here.
was not smooth, Sean.
And I know,
I like it.
this is what happens at this hour.
Let's talk about Michigan.
Michigan officials apparently are telling people that that they're not going to finish counting the vote until noon tomorrow. But what is out and what is left is really interesting. This does seem to favor President Trump in terms of what is remaining in that count. So the Trump campaign has got to be happy with that. And then lastly, to pivot hard again, because we're doing 3 hard hits, it was really interesting. John Bresnahan, a reporter for Politico, he covers the Hill. He's been with Roll Call. Very experienced reporter on Capitol Hill tweeted this out. Pollsters and pundits took it on the chin tonight. Huge blow to the media's credibility. There has to be changes in how these races are covered. What I find fascinating is John Bresnahan is a very, very seasoned reporter. Politico was one of the major outlets that was calling this a major joke for what a lot of the folks in the campaign were saying, and Trump supporters, as well as talking about how this is going to be a bad night for Republicans in the House. So it's interesting that their own reporters are now criticizing that.
It's unbelievable. Mark, looking at all these states, you've been looking at all these paths tonight. What does it look like to you between Biden and Trump?
Well,
knowing what we know.
Let's talk about Pennsylvania a little bit more. There's a very good political reporter in Pennsylvania who writes the main political reporter for the National Enquirer, Jonathan Tamari, who just tweeted regarding the outstanding vote that in the Philadelphia area and the Allegheny County area, which is the Pittsburgh area, there are almost 500,000 mail ballots to be counted.
Mm-hmm.
It's good for the former Vice President Biden. Republicans, there's a lot of votes out in York County where Trump had his best margin.
But
in
okay,
2016,
500,000 to be counted. Of those, how many does Biden pull? 350,000 on a good day? He's 700,000.
Well, let's go to the Philly question.
Yeah.
Right?
How many does he need?
Remember, there's one place in the whole country that before today was the focus of questions about, is it appropriate for Republicans to watch the ballots be counted, be cast? And now it's going to be, will they be proper to watch them be counted? Because there's all sorts of rules about how that works, and the Republicans have been aggressive. And you've seen on social media and in the news and in conservative blogs, Republicans trying to go observe the process and being kicked out. You've also seen overreach by Republicans. You saw Republicans make a big deal of photos of people dropping off ballots. One gentleman had a picture of himself holding up 2 ballots. Republicans put it in a legal filing. It turned out he was holding his ballot and his husband's ballot and was dropping them both in with his husband there, but not in the picture. My point is, again, Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, is about to become a war zone of lawyers and observers and questions about how many of these outstanding ballots are going to actually be approved. And that doesn't even get to the perfectly appropriate question of, if someone mails in their ballot without that inner security envelope, under Pennsylvania law, it should not be counted. What are Democrats going to say? They're going to find people whose ballots aren't counted, who have sympathetic stories, and say, how can you exclude this?
Before you do it, I want to say that Georgia...
You've got to understand the phrase that just
Okay, go
got
ahead.
used, because Joe Biden used it in that speech. All ballots should be counted.
Exactly. Okay.
Not all ballots
Properly
legally
cast.
properly cast. That's the thing. Remember, Philadelphia
where I
Supreme
was
Court
headed.
changed the rules to talk about how it doesn't have to have a visible postmark, and the signature validations aren't necessarily going to come into play as much. They've already set the predicate that any ballot that they find, any ballot should be counted, not whether it's properly cast. They're setting that predicate tonight with what Joe Biden has said. I've been saying this for weeks on the show. They've been setting this up knowing that this day was going to come.
This goes back to Florida 2000, where the question is, so Sean votes, and there's a problem with the way he cast his ballot. Should Sean be disenfranchised because he didn't follow the rules? Or should his ballot not be counted because he didn't follow the rules? That is a great question for law schools and civics classes and the Kennedy
This is
School
why
of
we have so
Government.
many attorneys in this country. Hang on one
it's gonna
second.
be
Let
a
me do
big
a little
fight.
news reporting here just for one moment. We want to call the state of Montana. Huge state, not a lot of votes in it, but it's going to go to the president, 55% to 43, as it is right now with 84% of the votes in. And we also want to say that in the state of Georgia, they have decided they are not going to call the race in Georgia tonight. They're saying it will be called tomorrow, but because of issues that they had at certain stations, certain polling stations, they're not going to call Georgia tonight. And this is actually
not going to finish counting.
that's 99% of votes in at this point, and the president up about 120,000
And yet the
votes
New
or
York
something
Times
like
continues
that.
to say the state favors Joe Biden.
Yeah, the New York Times. That's why Georgia was so interesting. Is that they had it. They switched
They
it to
nailed it
leaning.
with President Clinton, though.
Yeah.
I mean, President Hillary.
Look at that.
Look
at that. That's a big deal.
Wow, that is a big deal.
That is a big deal. You realize that
Yeah.
Sean Parnell has defeated Jake Tapper's candidate in Conor Lambert. Remember, this is the candidate that CNN's Jake Tapper tried to talk out of running.
Well, this guy was the picture of the resistance to Trump, and he was a picture of the blue wave coming in 2018 when they said we can't deal with this guy, so that he was going to be. This was going to happen all over the country. He only lasted one term.
58% in there, so it's not done.
Okay, that's not. Yeah. Okay, but that's a good point. All right, up 127,000 to 101,000. Okay.
And we're
that's
still
fair. That's
we're
fair.
Still waiting
I got ahead of myself.
We're still waiting for the president to talk.
Can I make a comment here about this? Normally, when the president talks, the press office will notify the press pool, right? That is that representative group of media, a TV camera, a news media, or a print person, et cetera, et cetera. It's that group that has to travel with the president everywhere to cover his moves. They have not notified the press pool that the president intends to speak. While the president has tweeted that, there is a time that the press needs to set. They need to know and be prepared that the president's coming. Sometimes it's only 10 minutes. But what we do know now is we're sitting here at 1:41 a.m. and the press pool has not been notified that the president intends to speak.
You remember last election night, the president put a lid on it, and then he went to dinner. Remember that?
Right, but he has now tweeted.
What do you think they're waiting
He likes
for?
to mess
They
around.
were trying to write something for him?
I don't know, but the thing that's interesting is you could at least tell them. Remember, a lot of times you'll see this in the press briefing room, and then you get a 2-minute warning, right? So they could say the president will be speaking in 10 minutes and then wait to give the 2-minute warning, and you drag it on and drag it on.
Let me ask a question I'd like to know the answer to myself, but I don't.
Okay.
Of the states that have not been projected, what might be still projected? We know Pennsylvania will not be. You just reported that Georgia will not be.
We're probably not going to get Michigan.
We're probably not going to get Michigan. I mean, I'm just wondering if the president's waiting for another state that he's hoping he gets tonight.
Waiting for one more to fall.
North Carolina?
Look, I don't think they're waiting for that. I think they are. They watched Joe Biden do what you said. They they realized that was a missed opportunity by Joe Biden because he wanted to get to bed.
It's a spectacularly close race. Look at the
I
numbers
think
on
the
screen,
president
Sam.
wants to make sure he says the right things. His team, his legal team, Mark, wants to look at this because it's not just a communication thing. They need to set the predicate for what they want people to know tomorrow morning.
Is there anything on that map besides Pennsylvania and Georgia and Michigan that we think will not be projected tonight, where they've stopped counting?
In Michigan.
Well, the only thing we might know is based on Amy Tarkanian that we might hear that Nevada goes for Biden.
Goes Biden.
And I'm hearing that Wisconsin and Milwaukee won't be called until tomorrow. I mean, excuse me, will not be finished counting until tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right. See, here's the thing. If that's a consensus count, I don't know if that's the NewsMax count or everybody has that count now. I wonder if the president would like to see if he can go ahead before he gives his speech.
Could be.
Well, look, I'll tell you this. I just talked to Emerald or texted with Emerald, who's there at the White House. I asked her, have they gotten an update? They said they've asked and they haven't gotten an answer back. Again, this means if the press office knew something was imminent, they would say, look, within 20 minutes, within 30 minutes, whatever. They're not getting them an answer. Now, could the president just show up? Sure.
Sean,
but the
hold on one
president-
second. The White House pool has just been called to the
There you
East
go.
Room.
There you go.
So there is
Let me-
the answer to the question.
Let me make one point here
Yeah,
about
go
the
ahead.
polling and the media's credibility. Now, these numbers could change dramatically. You put the popular vote back up. Is that possible?
Yeah, there's a
The
picture of the White
national-
House. The
the
president's going to
national
speak
popular
there very short, but let's
If it's
pull back
possible.
up that poll. Yeah.
The national poll showed the president losing by 10% in the national popular vote.
Yeah.
The national popular vote now margin is less than it was right now, is less than it was 4 years ago.
For Hillary, yeah.
The president's down just 2 million votes, just over 2 million votes, and that's far, far away from 10%.
But are we still expecting, I mean, how many more votes are there to be counted?
Well, there
You
might,
said it could
I
go
don't know how
north
much
of
is in from
150 million,
California,
yeah.
et cetera, but I don't think we're
Yeah.
going to, I can't imagine a universe where he's down, where he ends up being down 10%.
Yeah. No, I can't imagine that either. That's a good point. Back out, let's go back to that beautiful picture of the White House, the president up late
By the way,
tonight. Joe
can I
Biden's
just-
got a
while
lid
we
on it.
wait for the president, I will say,
Yeah, go ahead.
just in Republican, Michelle Fischbach in Minnesota has defeated longtime incumbent Colin Peterson. Again, that's another big pickup. It's a Republican challenger defeating a longtime Democratic incumbent.
In New York district?
No, that's Minnesota.
Oh, it's a
rather.
Minnesota district,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
Colin Peterson, longtime member. I know that they felt really good about it. Again, another good piece of news for Kevin McCarthy and the House Republicans, something that wasn't supposed to be going on tonight.
What do you think happens to the House? How do you think that falls? I mean, is it going to get tighter? I don't think the Republicans are going to get it back.
No, but they'll cut the lead.
tighten
And
it up.
they were expected to
And
be
again, that's
massacred.
not what the narrative was going into
Not at all.
tonight.
So Fox is now saying that Milwaukee campaign election officials say that they're going to finish counting at 3 a.m. tonight. And according to the analysis from the Washington Examiner, if Biden can't make up a gap there from Dane County, where the vote is at around Madison, the president has a lead over about 100,000. If that doesn't happen after Milwaukee and Dane come in, the president's likely to take Wisconsin. So my point is we should know tonight
About
the
Wisconsin.
president.
And when I said Milwaukee, when I said tomorrow, I meant as in today.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's after
Wisconsin-
midnight. I've lost track of what time it is. It's
No, what
1:45
day
here
it
on
is.
East
I
Coast.
think that's
Yes,
the bigger
yes,
thing.
We've got
Same
a House
thing.
race to call here real quick in New Jersey, if we want to pull that up. And that news about Wisconsin, by the way, is just unbelievable. This is U.S. House, New Jersey District 2. Hey, Jeff Van Drew, was he the Democrat that turned
He's a
Republican?
Democrat,
Yeah.
and Amy Kennedy is married to Patrick Kennedy, the former Rhode Island congressman and Ted Kennedy's son. So this is a big deal. Jeff Van Drew was that one who epically switched his vote, switched parties after the impeachment changed from Democrat to Republican.
Yep, right.
And they really
With
thought
the
they had
president's backing.
With the president's backing, they really thought that they had a good shot at picking this off.
They really did. And, as it is right now, 83% in, it's tight. But the incumbent definitely has the advantage at this point.
The Associated Press says that
Let's go to-
Nebraska 2 is going to Joe Biden. So
Nebraska 2
that
going to
gets
Joe
rid of
Biden.
our tie scenario.
Okay. All right. So that's no more 269.
No.
We want to take one more here. Oh, this is Kim Klacik. She had that great ad, made a lot of noise with it, but it wasn't enough to take down the incumbent in Maryland District 7. Boy, that's
It's only
that's
25%
tough,
in.
Only 25% in, but that's a huge margin right there.
Remember, Kwesi Mfume was the longtime congressman. He retired to take over the NAACP, I believe it was, if I'm not correct.
that's correct.
Then he stepped down from that and sought the seat back again years later. So he is well known in that Baltimore area.
That's the Cummings district, right?
It is. Elijah Cummings
district,
passed away. Kwesi Mfume ran in a very crowded primary. He has huge name identification in that Baltimore area district and won it again. Kim Klacik, viral videos, raised a lot of money, fantastic campaign. I think she's a bright star in the Republican Party, but that district is just...
If the president wins re-election, you're looking at the next something.
Yeah,
There you go.
Fill in the blank.
Ambassador to France.
Let's go to
I
one
think
in...
she stays domestically. But that gets back to that coalition that Joe was talking about earlier tonight. I think that these black Republicans have done such a great job, not only advancing themselves, but really helping the president and the Republican Party overall. Kim Klasik's a rising star, and I think that you saw that there was another gentleman who challenging Maxine Waters out in California, same kind of district, but again, ran a really good campaign, sharp messages, great ads. I think bright future in the party.
I hate to keep talking about the media, but that woman was not profiled by a single magazine like Elle or Vogue. Of course. You think if she were a Democrat, she would have been?
Oh, absolutely. But not only that, it doesn't matter. Not only is she, a a rising star and an unbelievably great candidate. But you look at the women overall in the Republican Party. I mean, Heather was State Department spokeswoman. All of these women that populate around Donald Trump that do amazing jobs, unbelievably talented. There's always this, but it's never, they don't get the credit. There's someone who runs for student council as a Democrat,
right.
and they get like this profile.
And again, it's not just press bashing. It has an impact on who wins this election because conservatives see this and they rebel against it.
But there's just, the problem is that if you're a conservative, you look at this and you say, wait a second, I see all these strong women that Donald Trump has appointed that surrounds himself with, that advise him, that he thinks a lot of, and yet the media narrative is quite different when it comes to it. It just doesn't jive. And I think the press continues to do damage with that. You see this when they do profiles of female senators. They barely, they don't profile a Joni Ernst or a Deb Fischer. I mean, it's unbelievable.
And that's why they don't sell any magazines.
Hurts
because
the country.
They just,
it hurts,
they
it hurts
hate
the
half
country.
the country. Let's take a look at another House district. This is California 6, I believe. California 50. I was way off. That's Darrell Issa. That's a big race. And that's a deadlock tie right now at 70%. Mark, what do you see there?
Well, California counts very slowly, so there have been House races there that have been not even as close as that, and that's obviously within just a handful of votes that don't get decided for weeks. So I think those are two.
Wasn't Darrell Issa getting out of the game and then he jumped back in?
He did. He got out of the district.
He retired from a slightly different district, and I don't know why he wants to run again. He was
He's
at
got
the
a lot
time
of
he
money,
was
right?
the time he was in the House. He was the richest member of Congress, I think, not just of the House. But he wants back in. But again, I think those two guys are going to be waiting probably weeks for this to be settled because
For a
California
long time, if you had a
counts
car
slow.
alarm that went off, it was Darrell Issa's voice that was in it. That was how he made his fortune. But what he did was Duncan Hunter Jr. ran to succeed his father in Congress. Duncan Hunter Jr. then resigned due to some indiscretions. Darrell Issa wanted back in the game. He ran for that district, which is actually more Republican-friendly than his district had been trending. So he gets back in the game in a better district for himself.
Talking about that in California, we could see California take back some of those seats. They got crushed in 2018 in some of those areas that used to be Republican, and then some of those could be coming back. I want to do one more here. This is Florida 26. This is a big one. This is the Donna Shalala, who held this one as the Democrat. Actually, no, I got the wrong one here. That's okay.
another
That's
Democratic
Carlos
incumbent.
Jimenez.
The
Yeah,
other
this is a
Democratic
different one.
incumbent
Okay,
who
this is 26. So this is just south and west of the city of Miami-Dade County. This is a big loss for the Democrats here. 99% in. This one's called for Carlos Jimenez.
Yeah, this one was not unexpected. Shalala's loss is. This one was one that was targeted by Republicans. They felt they had a very strong candidate. They felt she was vulnerable. So this is a solid pickup and not a sure thing, but one that they were making a strenuous effort at.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, absolutely. That you cannot overstate what happened today in Miami-Dade County, Sean. I mean, that was such an early indication of the night to come. When we saw those numbers, it was unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, and it showed, A, that he's got growth, B, that his message is resonating with especially the Cuban-American community down there. Look, in 2016, there was a lot of skepticism of Donald Trump and his policies. What he's done is shore that up. That was huge for his campaign. I also think that the idea that he grew his vote probably scared a lot of Democrats. They realized what was happening there. But it's good news for I mean, if you look at a Governor Ron DeSantis, that's got to make you feel really good, as you think about a re-election or going forward. But it's also, again, we talked about this way early in the night. I cannot give enough credit to the president's ground game, his data operation. They knew who they had to go after. They grew the vote in so many of these states. I think Joe Biden, part of the reason they felt like they were doing well is they looked at a lot of these numbers and said, well, we're exceeding where we were in 2016, not thinking that the Trump registration and turn-on operation was going to exceed that.
Heather, I wanted to ask, I mean, what did he do so well to make those connections?
What did the president do so well?
What did the president do so well to connect, I mean, to get that growth in these key areas?
Yeah, I think first and foremost that he had policies that worked for those communities. For example, when we talk about the Latino voters in Florida, he talked a lot about what he has done in Venezuela and trying to prop up and assist a democratically elected government. And that's important. It may not resonate with voters in Chicago, but it resonates resonates with voters in Miami. So he talked to them about policies that were important to them. In other parts of the country, he talked about the nation's drug epidemic. That resonated with a lot of families. He's talked about America's forgotten worker, which he hasn't forgotten over the past 4 years, but they have felt forgotten in the past, in particular by Democrats. So I think the president not only talked to those voters, but he genuinely likes them. You know, Sean and I both worked for the president, and we know how genuine and sincere he is when he talks about his concern and care for policies affecting Black Americans, Latinos, and others, and his support for women, and bringing in tough, good, competent people around him, and women in particular.
Can I say one thing that's interesting? One demographic that we haven't talked about tonight, we talked about it on my show today. I think it'll be interesting to see how it played in Florida. The president, and this is in Heather's wheelhouse here, the president did a lot with the state of Israel that I think will play big with the Jewish community in South Florida, Broward County in particular.
Absolutely.
That it'll be really interesting. What he has done for the state of Israel, I think resonated with a lot of Jewish voters, very similar to the Hispanic and Black communities that said, you know, we don't really know a lot about your record here, but he delivered big time. And I think that those small little margins, he got 25% of the Jewish vote in 2016. A little bit of a boost there in Broward County would have made a big difference too.
Absolutely. We got to go. We're going to go to Emerald Robinson live in the yard at the White House, the North Lawn. At least it's a nice night to be standing out there. It sounds like we're going to hear from the president here pretty soon, right?
Yeah, we're hoping to. We thought that they were about to take us into the East Room there for a few minutes, and then we were told to hold again. Perhaps they're, you know, still waiting to see a little more come in. So we do expect to be going soon. The president, as we talked about a little bit earlier, has already sounded off somewhat on Twitter, so that could give you a preview of what we might hear in the East Room when he does make these remarks. Now, keep in mind, his opponent, Joe Biden, has already called a lid for the night. So there will probably be something about that as well. But like you said, I mean, it's a good night out here. It's not as cold as it was yesterday, so that's a good thing for us. But look, the attitude here continues to be waiting, but there is definitely a shift as we've seen things come in.
I wanted to ask you about that.
I mean, a different tone, right, than what we heard at the start of the night and what we've heard for weeks now. They're second guessing the polling. They're second guessing the projections that were made earlier on. And of course, you're hearing the Trump camp really call them out in a big way already on what they had to say for weeks leading up to now. And a lot of the whole, this is a lot like 2016 all over again, right?
Right, yeah, and I wanted to ask you about that. You know, you get a lot of messages, you're well connected. I mean, how did the tone change between 8, 9 o'clock tonight and maybe midnight?
Well, if you're talking about for the media, you saw more of a, oh, well, you know, this is much closer than what we thought, or this is, you know, trending this way, but we've got to watch. As far as for the Trump campaign, they really were pretty confident heading into tonight in some of the areas that the president performed in, and they still sound really, really confident about Wisconsin and Michigan. And of course, we've been hearing for some time now in the media and from the Democrats that they securely had that locked down. So we're seeing those shifts now as we're looking specifically at those states and, of course, Pennsylvania still.
Yeah, absolutely. Emerald, thank you so much. And, I mean, as soon as we hear back from the president, we're going to get that speech. We're going to be on, and we're going to talk about that, and we're going to hear from him. That's excited for that. Mark, go
have
ahead.
some significant 6 news, which is the New York Times may not be wrong about Georgia. The vote just came in DeKalb County around Atlanta. Joe Biden is now leading in DeKalb County 83% to 16%.
Yep.
And the race has tightened up a lot. Now, again, because of Michigan, because of Pennsylvania, because of Wisconsin, the president can now win this race without Georgia, but boy, it would make it more complicated for him.
How tight is the state now?
The
Can we
state
widen that out?
is now 50% to 48%. It's about 100,000 votes. So
What else is there to be called in that? I know that blue area around Atlanta.
91% in. Let's take a
some of
look
these
here
other
about
ones
what's out. This could get very tight. And I can see now why the New York Times at least has an argument as to why it is the president might lose the state.
Yeah, they've got it tilting Biden as far as the New York Times goes.
Say something about Florida. This is a state that Michael Bloomberg, my former boss, put $100 million in.
Yeah.
It's a state that some Democrats argued early in this cycle, after Biden became the de facto nominee, maybe they shouldn't compete because there's a little bit of a Charlie Brown in the football aspect to Florida. Since Barack Obama stopped running in 2016, Hillary Clinton made a big play and lost. In 2018, they made a big play to win the governorship and they lost. And now this. There's one statewide elected official in Florida who's a Democrat, the agriculture commissioner.
Yep. There's a number, as we just, and I want you to keep talking, I just want to just show people, this is inside the White House. We're waiting for the president. There's a number of people just kind of making their way in here. We're going to hear from the president here very shortly. But Mark, keep going about Georgia.
So there's lots to say in terms of Florida. There's lots to say about how it is the president won, and that should definitely be unpacked. It's a fascinating thing. But just in a macro way, this is another attempt of Democrats to take Florida. The Democrats lost it. They lost it badly, probably worse than Barack Obama won it by. So this is going to cause some soul searching within the Democratic Party. Why can't they win these statewide races in what is still the most politically significant state in the country in many ways?
I'm looking here. I see Fulton at 72% in. That's a big one for Biden. That's right in the heart of Atlanta. And then we got DeKalb also right there. And those two are both heavy Biden.
Yeah.
And they still got another 20 to 30% to report. The rest of the state, from what I can tell,
is largely
in. There's a couple red counties that aren't that populated that still got a little bit more to go, but it's going to be really tight.
So I'm going to go back to our map now and give Georgia to the Democrats and see where does that leave the president. If he loses Georgia, but he wins the other significant 6.
So Georgia,
let's give him Michigan for the sake of argument.
I'm going to say, and then Michigan, he's got about a 350, almost 400,000 vote.
So would he need to take Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania in that situation?
No, as a matter of fact,
he wouldn't.
Let's see. He needs them all.
Yeah, I was going to say,
them all. Assuming he doesn't get Nevada or Arizona, he needs them all.
Without Georgia.
Without Georgia. So that's very significant.
Yeah.
Very significant.
And it's a tie. It looks like it could be just almost a tie ball game at this point. I mean, it's 100,000 votes off, right? By the way, it's 2 o'clock in the morning here on the East Coast, and we're still waiting for the president to make a statement.
I'll tell you, just watching them put that seal on, that's when you know it's real.
Yeah.
They put the seal on the podium. He's on his way.
Okay.
So, I mean, we should be pretty close to the 2-minute warning at this point.
What kind of tone do you expect? I mean, with what we just learned about Georgia, I mean, it's still tight. This is still close. What do you expect him to say, Sean?
Well, again, I think the question is, do you contrast what you say now with what Joe Biden said? Meaning, do you actually talk about policy? I'm going to go out there and fight because I know how important it is for America's, workers, and da-da-da-da. Or does he just do what Biden did, give a quick update and say, hey, I've been, we got our teams ready to go. We're not going to go to sleep until this happens. We'll be back tomorrow. I think they have to recognize it's 2 in the morning and there's only so much you can possibly do.
Right.
That's kind of the, this isn't 10 or 11 o'clock at night when you've got people on edge. There's no one right now that thinks that you're going to definitely know, because even if Georgia comes in, that looks like it's coming down at best to a recount, or the president's going to have his team out. Pennsylvania, again, too close to call. Michigan and Wisconsin both look good, but there's so much that's out that there's not much more you do at this point.
Sean, a question for you. I have a question about the process by which the president and his team put together remarks on his behalf, especially in a tense situation like this, where you're going to have lawyers who want to weigh in. How much of this is president-driven, what he is insisting on saying, and how much of it is got the filter of the aides there, like a Stephen Miller and the lawyers?
It's a great question because, again, I think everybody's going to try to have their hand in this. But at the end of the day, I also think what's going to be interesting tonight to your question, Heather, is how much does he say on script?
But there's a prompter there, right?
Yeah.
Is that a prompter? Or am I seeing something else?
I
What is that on the right side of the
yet.
frame? Is that a teleprompter?
No.
Oh, no, it's a shadow.
Yeah, so...
By the way, we just got a 5-minute warning from the president,
But this
so
is
it's about 4 minutes
something
away.
that Mark brought up earlier tonight, and that was about Joe Biden. He says he can't do anything dumb. Don't do anything stupid. And I asked you when we were offset, well, what would something dumb or stupid look like? And you said, well, if he says the wrong thing, if he comes out and he says the wrong thing. So the president has to be very careful here tonight, does he not?
Well, again, yes. He may want to come out and talk about we're going to win. We're going to win and don't steal it or whatever. Look, he's got viable paths. I think that what he doesn't want to do is have everyone wake up tomorrow and have the last thing the president of the United States said, which the morning shows will start to cover, is the president created chaos and confusion. Let them talk about the fact that this is a close race, that he's done a great job. He defied expectations. I think the media is eating enough crow. Don't give them a reason not to do that, right? And if he throws a bone and says, "Oh, this was fraud and they're trying to steal this," they're going to, glom onto that.
Liberal Twitter is already saying the president's trying to steal the election, even though he's ahead.
Right.
So don't give it to him. But his tweet opened the door. But you're right. He would be smart to not say anything about stealing.
I can't get over. These three counties. You got DeKalb, Clayton, and Fulton County. These are seriously blue places.
Have you already looked? Is Biden doing better than Hillary did in those counties?
Have you already looked? Here, I haven't. I would suspect he is.
I'm not assigning that to you, but you've been pretty good about that. You've been the leader in checking.
It's not an easy thing to do. It takes a lot of maneuvering with the website here, but he's doing very well. I mean, in Clayton County, with 84% in, Biden's got 85% of the vote to 14 for Donald Trump.
By the way, I know I think we might be seeing the president, not just yet, but the AP has called the Montana race for Senator Steve Daines, who faced a tough challenge. I don't know if you guys covered that when I was offset, but I think, again, that does put, again, another seat at rest.
That was Bullock Daines. Bullock was the former governor, wanted to take that, tried to run for president.
Yeah.
And they also have the governor's house now in Montana, first time in 16 years, so that's significant. Montana's also a state where they've had a lot of people from California move in. So you'd think that the state was really taking a turn to the left with all these new folks coming in. Also, 45,000 new voters registered in that state since the primary alone. So you got a big influx of new people coming into a state that's pretty small. It's like 800,000 or so population.
If Georgia ends up picking the president, which it could, Barack Obama's last-minute visit will be a big deal. The decision that the Biden campaign made to go on TV heavily in Georgia, the Kamala Harris visited extensively. Joe Biden visited some. Jill Biden did some. So
how much? I heard in a lot of media narrative that Stacey Abrams, the former Democrat who had run for governor,
she'll get a lot of the credit.
It's interesting. Well, how much does she deserve, and how much will she get?
She did three things. She'll get a lot, and she did three things to deserve it. One is she proved that you could win statewide or get close to winning statewide as a Democrat, because they've had trouble winning statewide there. Second is she created a couple of organizations that have really worked to register voters and to work on civic engagement. And then lastly, she showed the kind of outrage, because from her point of view, as she stated repeatedly, the election was stolen from her. And she channeled her own personal outrage into getting people to register to vote and to feel like they needed to fight back against the Republican machine. So
these numbers
she'll
are
get
identical.
A lot of credit.
In these three counties,
identical.
Atlanta.
The percentage are identical? What about
identical.
the vote totals?
Let me just flip it back
You just keep
here.
making it
Boy,
tougher and
Halpert
tougher
is just,
for her.
I thought you'd look up both at the same time.
It's a panel guest,
Rob Schmidt is
he
now
wants so much.
wondering why he didn't take more math in college.
I was never good at math. DeKalb County, it looks about the same. It looks like
numbers,
a $250,000 to Hillary back in 2016.
I'm surprised that he would lose if it was basically no different from 4 years ago.
No, it'll be higher. It'll be 40, 50,000 higher in DeKalb County.
Okay,
which is east side Atlanta.
That could decide the president. And it's interesting because, of course, they won that Senate race, it appears, without a runoff. So the president's clearly running behind.
They still got that stranglehold on the inner cities. They managed to do it in a couple of these states, like we just saw with that girl that tried to take Cummings' seat.
Yeah.
They still have it in some places. They absolutely do.
If we're still on the air after the president's done, I think we should look at the Georgia exit poll, seriously, to see how it compares to Florida. In other words, like the president seems to do very well with older voters in Florida. Did he do it did he not do as well with older voters in Georgia?
Curious. We had a 5-minute warning from the president about 5 minutes ago. As you take a look inside the White House, they got a number of the press there, media members there, just waiting to hear from him. Right now, as it stands, the president's 2 electoral votes behind. But if you were sitting in this situation, I think you could say you'd rather be the president at this moment than Joe Biden. The president's got
it's a pretty close call with Georgia.
It's a close call with Georgia, but you cannot. I mean, you got to look at that Pennsylvania lead is dramatic. Michigan looks great. Those two put together, it looks good. Even if you lose Georgia,
No,
you got to take Wisconsin.
You got to take Wisconsin or something else.
Wisconsin looks good though. for the president. I think it looks pretty good right now. It's early, but it looks pretty good. I don't know.
All right, so, what I'm being told is that if all that math works out in Georgia, they got to find, 40,000 plus votes in a bunch of those rural counties to go the president's way. That may be a bit of a challenge, but again, you've got a lot of places that are going to be slow to report in, some, military ballots. This is suddenly going to become a very, very interesting dynamic.
So what you're saying, when they extrapolate out what's left in these 3 big blue counties,
Yep. It looks like they'll still have to, they will
40.
come up 40,000 short in Georgia that they will have to try to find in rural counties.
That's a lot to find.
That's a lot to find.
Yeah.
But, let's...
I'm not prepared to apologize yet to the New York Times Needle, but I'm getting pretty close.
Well,
they were right just as once.
It was too early to call, and at some point tonight, and that happened. I'm just trying to. Okay.
The interesting thing is, Mark brought this up earlier. That popular vote that they really thought, all these polls nationally, and I'm one of the folks that said national polls didn't matter, focused on the battleground poll. But the funny thing is, you're now looking at a 2 million vote delta nationally speaking, 62 million to 64 million. That's not a 10-point spread.
No, and a million could come in California as it did 4 years ago. A million came in after Election Day, I believe, in California, and accounted for one of the 3 million in California that accounted for the entire national gap. It's never going to get to a 10-point spread.
Let's regroup here just for a second. Take a look at some of these states. Let's broaden it out for a second. We'll start with the state of Pennsylvania. We can pull it up here, and just how good the president looks in Pennsylvania. You got 77% of the votes in the state of Pennsylvania. This is Joe Biden's home state. The president up by more than 700,000 votes at this hour. I believe they have stopped counting in the state of Pennsylvania, but the president has a pretty handsome lead at this point, and we've looked through some of these counties. It does seem like it's going to be really, really tough for Joe Biden to make up that gap, the same way it looks like it might be tough for the president in Georgia to make up the gap. Let's look at the state of Michigan.
Can you go back to Pennsylvania real quick?
Let's flip it back 1 second.
Sorry about that.
Sean's got a quick question.
Where are we? Sorry, that's Michigan. Yeah, sorry, guys.
There you go. Back to Pennsylvania.
So, here's the interesting thing in Pennsilvania. Yeah, I know that 77% of the votes in, but, when you look at what President Trump got last time, he got 2,970,000 votes. He's just shy of that now, right? He's about 100,000 off. This is the real interesting thing. Hillary Clinton last time got 2.9026441. Joe Biden's way off of where Hillary Clinton did.
But there's a quarter of the vote left to come in.
I know, but look at the difference.
All going to Biden.
To the point is, sure, right, you got a quarter of the vote left to get in. Trump's just 100,000 off of where he was last time. Joe Biden is, 900,000 off of where he is. So that trend doesn't portend well. I mean, that shows that President Trump's growing his vote. The Pennsylvania officials, prior to election night, were talking about the fact that they had registered 100,000 plus new Republican voters in the state. It looks like that paid off. This goes back to that registration and ground game effort.
And the fracking comment, 100%.
Sure.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead to Michigan now and take a look. Another state that is surprising a lot of people.
All right.
We got some more members of the administration coming in there at the White. We're still waiting for the president. Any minute now, the president's going to speak tonight. We heard from Joe Biden. He spoke for about 2 minutes. Didn't say a whole lot except they feel good, and then he went to bed.
Before he walks in, because he's doing this, here, real quick over under. Heather, do you think that he talked for more or less than 5 minutes? It's 2:11 a.m.
We laying down bets?
I think it depends on who he's listening to tonight. If it's the president and the president's gut that's going out there and he's giving his speech, he talks longer. But if he's listening to the lawyers and other folks who are weighing in, then I think he keeps it short and
I'm
tight.
actually wrestling with that myself.
Yeah.
Because I think that, to me, is the million-dollar question. How long he talks will be reflective of who he listened to tonight. I think the lawyers want to keep him tight. They want to keep it focused, but I know the president wants to get out there.
If this were Bill Clinton or George Bush, they would have arranged the soundbite that they wanted to lead the Today Show tomorrow and every other newscast. Yeah. I don't think the president will do that. I've never seen him do it, but let's see if there's a soundbite.
Well, there may be a soundbite. I don't know that it's the one the president's going to want.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
And if it's too long, but that's the thing.
What would the right soundbite be?
I'm proud of what we did tonight.
I'm fighting for you.
I'm going to fight for you.
Yeah.
We got a lot of ways to go. I'll see you tomorrow.
You can never go wrong with "I'm fighting for you."
Yeah, but again, the question is, does he get up there and start talking about the process?
Or lead a chant of "lock her up"?
Right. Well, there's only a couple hundred. That's the East Room of the White House. I don't know that works as well.
You know as well as I do, he could do that.
Filled with reporters.
Anything's possible at this point.
Jeez. We're still waiting for the president. We could look at a couple more states if we, well, I don't know if you guys want to do that or not, but we were taking a nice little look at Michigan, and you see a 53 to 46 lead for the president. 71% in, that's 16 electoral votes, an important state. This is a state that 12 hours ago the Democrats were laughing about.
As were the Republicans.
As were the, yeah, it was a waste of time. And look at this lead. This is what, 250,000 votes ahead, 71% reporting. Michigan looks pretty good. Let's take one quick look at Wisconsin. Just 1 second, Heather. We got 1.4 million to 1.35. So yeah, you got about 100,000 votes there in Wisconsin with 91% in. I'd have to take a closer look at the counties to make a determination there, but Wisconsin looks pretty good. We can take a look at Georgia, too. This is the one I think the president's nervous about. Mark, go ahead and talk a little bit more about how tight this is getting.
I mean, it's gotten tighter, and where, as we discussed a little while ago, where the vote is out are these big counties that are overwhelmingly Democratic.
Why does it say 90? I mean, is it really 99% of votes in?
No, boy.
I mean, could that be?
If that's the
something's off.
If that's the case, then...
If that's the case, it's not nearly that close.
No, but there's something going on there in the data that, because there's not a lot of pushback from Republicans. That both Sean and I have had contact with them where they've made it clear that they don't think this is theirs to lose at this point on the Republican side. So I don't know what that is a little confusing. And again, of all the states that are out, this is the one. I mean, look, there are 4 big states on the map now, right? Georgia, and then the so-called blue wall: Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. The president needs to win 2 of the 4, right? 2 of the 4 to win this. And, you know, it's
not just 2 of 4. That
Pennsylvania
Pennsylvania prize becomes almost...
He can win it with Georgia and Michigan, I believe.
Right. If he doesn't win Georgia, though, he has to take...
get Pennsylvania and one of the other 2.
No, he has to take...
all 3 of the other 2.
He has to take
Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So he's got to win. So the president's got to win 3 of the 4.
That's right. If he gets Pennsylvania, then that gets him to 251. Then he can take either Michigan
or Georgia.
Yeah, but that somehow, once he loses Michigan, if he loses Georgia, he's got to take Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan.
Yeah. Although we should say he's ahead in all those right now.
That's right.
He is. And I honestly think he looks really good in Pennsylvania, which I think is...
Can I tell you the scary part is, I mean, look, if that's where he gets, you give... If this plays out, that you give Georgia to the Democrats, you give Pennsylvania to Donald Trump, Michigan to Donald Trump, and Wisconsin to Donald Trump, you come 277 to 259.
That's right.
Remember, last time the president won with 306 electoral votes, but he had 3 faithless electors that went away. There's going to be a real battle for those electors real quick to get people to try to defect, for challenges to happen. The Biden campaign is not going to take a 277 win on the Trump campaign's behalf and say, okay, good race, we'll call it a day. I mean, there's going to be legal battles ensuing on either side if we come down with a scenario that's no one's over 280.
Wasn't there a Supreme Court decision on faithless electors since the last election?
There was. I just cannot. But again, I think what it
Rob will Google it.
Rob, get on that, man. We need you to look at that up.
Lawyers could have been helpful.
Yeah.
What it was, too, is you got to remember there's a difference between states that allow faithless electors and states that don't.
Right.
What I think most of that came down with was there were states where it was silent. And what I think got reaffirmed was whether or not those faithless electors, if the state says they have to vote for the person they were elected by,
right.
then they must.
Right.
But there are some states that are silent on that, and that I don't think was addressed by the court.
So just to recap this for everybody at home, if you're just tuning in, it's a very tight race. We're waiting for the president to speak here at any minute. We got a 5-minute warning 10 minutes ago. It happens. It's basically coming down to 4 states from what we can determine right now. It looks like it's going to be down to Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. So these are the 4 states you need to get really familiar with as we move into this last round. The race right now is very tight, 213 to 225. It looks like Donald Trump needs to win 3 of those 4 states in order to take this thing. And at this point, he's leading in all 4 of them. But Georgia is getting really, really, really close. Pennsylvania, he's got a nicer lead. Michigan and Wisconsin, he's shocking the world right now by doing so well in, vastly overperforming, way ahead of what the polls were anticipating just a matter of hours ago. So that's the situation as we have it right now.
Can I tell you, by the way,
go ahead.
what this says to me right now is when they give that 5-minute warning, it's one thing to go 2 minutes over the 5-minute warning, 3 minutes over the 5-minute warning. What this gets back to is what's going in that speech. This to me says they're sitting upstairs having a back and forth with the President of the United States who's saying, this is what I want to say, and them saying, Mr. President, this is what you really need to say.
And in the current configuration, at a night like this, I assume Jared and Ivanka are in the room because they're there.
I would assume Jared and Ivanka are in the room, Mark Meadows is in the room. I guarantee you've got Bill Steppe and his campaign manager, Jason Miller, senior communications advisor.
Kayleigh
McEnany is definitely there. Hope Hicks, Stephen Miller, that core team that's up there. The question that really comes down to is what lawyers are there. And I'm not just talking about Pat Cipollone, the White House counsel, but there's a question of what are the campaign lawyers telling him. So the Jenna Ellises, who is in that room with him from the campaign that is telling him what they are doing and what they want to make sure, because what they don't want to do is have something the president says tonight come back to bite them coming down.
Do you think, besides that legal point, which is a great one, do you think there's any communications camps? Do you think some are arguing to be more aggressive, to reach out? What would the camps be?
Look, I've done two elections. 1994, we lost by 2 votes, in Connecticut 2, and then I did Florida 22, where we won by 386 votes. When you're up, you declare victory. You want the momentum, and then you figure, let everyone solve it up, because half the battle is a PR battle. So I think that there's going to be people up there saying, Mr. President, look, we've got a path to 270. This is where you are right now. Why don't you go up there and say you're leading in Michigan, you're leading in Wisconsin, you're leading in North Carolina, you think you're great in Pennsylvania, and by the way, there's, in Philadelphia, there's a bunch of shenanigans. So declare victory and make the Biden campaign go on defense in the morning. I guarantee you there's a camp arguing that.
On nights like this, on speeches like this, one thing I do with all Trump speeches, count the number of times he says I and count the number of times he says we. He tends to do better when he says we and doesn't make it all about himself.
Right. Well, this is, again, I think the real interesting thing is, remember, you've got all of these factions. Someone's got to be typing it out. Then he's got to look at it. So this is an iterative process of the lawyers, the communications folks, and the campaign folks. They all have different interests. Those campaign folks know that they've got to be able to go back up what he says. They got to go out there. They've got to put the judges and the lawyers in place. They've got to make sure that they got the people on the ground to do the recounts. So they got to back up what he says. So it's one thing to have someone go up in that group and say, Mr. President, here's what you should say. The campaign team knows that they got to have it. The other thing that they got to make sure is that the Republican National Committee, they've got a big legal fund. One of the things that all of these folks have been raising is money for these recounts. And it's part of their cash on hand total, but it's segregated just for legal activities. This is where I think some of those legal funds now, they're ready to deploy them. They've had those sitting inside.
Do we have any idea what the size of the Republican legal fund is compared to the Democrats?
They're both unlimited.
Hey, there's Don Jr., there's Mark Meadows, the family's coming out.
One other thing to watch for, is he a happy warrior or has he got a lot of grievance?
Yeah. But look, you see that Eric Tiffany now coming out. Everybody looks happy. That's a good sign.
And probably not an accident. Happy warriors.
Yep.
Upbeat.
Well, we're still
Make
getting
America
by the
happy
way,
again.
Wanted to just report, the New York Times reporting in Georgia, 91% of precincts reporting. So that's what they have.
That makes more
not
sense.
quite, that does make more sense. So we're still waiting. Georgia's still dicey. The first family has arrived there in the East Room, and we're still waiting on the president. It's 2:20 in the morning.
Not in California.
Here on the East Coast, but not in California, and they're announcing the president should be walking in right now. There he is. Let's take a listen.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Please sit. Thank you. This is without question the latest news conference I've ever had. We love you. I appreciate it very much. And I want to thank the American people for their tremendous support. Millions and millions of people voted for us tonight. And a very sad group of people is trying to disenfranchise that group of people. And we won't stand for it. We will not stand for it. I want to thank the First Lady, my entire family, and Vice President Pence, Mrs. Pence, for being with us, for all three of us. And we were getting ready for a big celebration. We were winning everything, and all of a sudden it was just called off. The results tonight have been phenomenal, and we are getting ready. I mean, literally, we were just all set to get outside and just celebrate something that was so beautiful, so good. Such a vote, such a success. The citizens of this country have come out in record numbers. This is a record. There's never been anything like it. To support our incredible movement, we won states that we weren't expected to win. Florida, we didn't win it. We won it by a lot. We won the great state of Ohio. We won Texas. We won Texas. We won Texas by 700,000 votes, and they don't even include it in the tabulations. It's also clear that we have won Georgia. We're up by 2.5% or 117,000 votes with only 7% left. They're never going to catch us. They can't catch us. Likewise, we've clearly won North Carolina, where we're up 1.4% or 77,000 votes with only approximately 5% left. They can't catch us. We also, if you look and you see, Arizona, we have a lot of life in that. And somebody declared that it was a victory for, and maybe it will be. I mean, that's possible. But certainly there were a lot of votes out there that we could get because we're now just coming into what they call Trump territory. I don't know what you call it, but these were friendly Trump voters. And that could be overturned. The gentleman that called it, I watched tonight, he said, well, we think it's fairly unlikely that he could catch. Well, fairly unlikely. And we don't even need it. We don't need that. That was just a state that if we would have gotten it, it would have been nice, Arizona. But there's a possibility, maybe even a good possibility. In fact, since I saw that originally, it's been changed and the numbers have substantially come down just in a small amount of votes. So we want that obviously to stay in play. But most importantly, we're winning Pennsylvania by a tremendous amount of votes. We're up 600. Think of this. Think of this. Think of this. We're up 690,000 votes in Pennsylvania. 690,000. These aren't even close. It's not like, oh, it's close. With 64% of the vote in, it's going to be almost impossible to catch. And we're coming into good Pennsylvania areas where they happen to like your president. I mean, it's like very good. So we'll probably expand that. We're winning Michigan, but I'll tell you, I looked at the numbers. I said, whoa. I said, wow, that's a lot. By almost 300,000 votes, and 65% of the vote is in. And we're winning Wisconsin, so we're winning. We don't need all of them. We need, because when you add Texas in, which wasn't added, I spoke with the really wonderful governor of Texas just a little while ago, and Greg Abbott, he said, congratulations. He called me to congratulate me on winning Texas. I mean, we won Texas. I don't think they finished quite the tabulation, but there's no way. And it was almost complete, but he congratulated me. Then he said, by the way, what's going on? I've never seen anything like this. Can I tell you what? Nobody has. So we won by 107,000 votes with 81% of the vote. That's Michigan. So when you take those three states in particular, and you take all of the others, I mean, we have so many, we had such a big night. You just take a look at all of these states that we've won tonight, and then you take a look at the kind of margins that we've won them by. And all of a sudden, it's not like we're up 12 votes and we have 60% left. We won states, and all of a sudden, I said, what happened to the election? It's off. And we have all these announcers saying, what happened? And then they said, oh, because you know what happened? They knew they couldn't win. So they said, let's go to court. And did I predict this, Newt? Did I say this? I've been saying this from the day I heard they were going to send out tens of millions of ballots. I said exactly, because either they were going to win, or if they didn't win, they'll take us to court. So Florida was a tremendous victory, 377,000. Texas, as we said. Ohio, think of this. Ohio, a tremendous state, a big state. I love Ohio. We won by 8.1%, 461. Think of it. Almost 500,000 votes. North Carolina, big victory with North Carolina. And so we won there. We lead by 76,000 votes with almost nothing left. And all of a sudden, everything just stopped. This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election. We did win this election. So our goal now is to ensure the integrity for the good of this nation. This is a very big moment. This is a major fraud in our nation. We want the law to be used in a proper manner. So we'll be going to the U.S. Supreme Court. We want all voting to stop. We don't want them to find any ballots at 4 o'clock in the morning and add them to the list, okay? It's a very sad moment. To me, this is a very sad moment, and we will win this, and we, as far as I'm concerned, we already have won it. So I just want to thank you, and I want to thank all of our support. I want to thank all of the people that worked with us, and Mr. Vice President, say a few words, please. Please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to join you in thanking more than 60 million Americans who have already cast their vote for 4 more years for President Donald Trump in the White House. And while the votes continue to be counted, we're going to remain vigilant, as the President said. The right to vote has been at the center of our democracy since the founding of this nation, and we're going to protect the integrity of the vote. But I really believe with all of my heart, with the extraordinary margins, Mr. President, that you've inspired in the states that you just described, and the way that you launched this movement across the country to make America great again, I truly do believe, as you do, that we are on the road to victory, and we will make America great again. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, everybody.
President Trump speaking tonight from the White House. Final thoughts, Sean Spicer.
I think first 60% of what he said was perfect. You know, Mark said it earlier. He said a lot of we, right tone. I think he gave the media a gift. The morning show's looking for that quote. Yeah. That was the question that Mark asked earlier. They're going to take that. He declared earlier. He said to go into the Supreme Court. Look, he's got a path to 270. He should have, he should stay focused on that. He can't give the media who are wrong tonight such a gift, right? Mm-hmm. Stay focused on winning Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, and then take the 270. But don't give the Democrats, the left, another reason to have an excuse to ignore how wrong they were tonight.
And Mark, how much of this is in the hands of the lawyers, and how much of it is in the hands of President Trump and the perception that he projects from here until we do have a decision?
This is now 4-dimensional chess. There's the legal battle, there's the political battle at the level of the politicians, there is the PR battle, and then there's the grassroots battle. How do the American people who, regardless of who they voted for, how do they handle this over the next few days, potentially weeks. This is going to be a fraught moment, and I agree with Sean. It was unfortunate for the president, I think, for his own political interests and for the country, for him to take it in the direction of making this about grievance, although he is right. What happened with the networks stopping their projections was unprecedented, and it's going to anger a lot of Republicans.
So I just got a text from one of our colleagues who was saying in the middle of that speech, during NBC News' coverage, Savannah Guthrie was cutting in to try to fact check him. Again, it's like they just can't stop. And this just shows the problem. They don't want to, it's almost like they want to ignore how wrong they were tonight.
Really?
Well, but also how wrong they were.
Right. They have to beat him or they were wrong.
Right. And that's the problem, is that Mark's absolutely right. Tonight, President Trump showed the level of support. The polls are definitely wrong, right? Mm-hmm. We know that from the popular vote. We definitely know that from the electoral vote. Regardless of how this thing ends up, there was a lot of people that were wrong. And I think what we did here at NewsMax was let people understand the facts and let them play out as they were, as opposed to trying to tell them what to think and what we thought was going to happen. We let everyone watch it. And a problem is now is that places like NBC News can't admit they were wrong, so they've got to figure out how to go on to that next battle.
And let's be honest, a lot of America went to bed tonight. If they were watching those other networks, they're going to wake up with a different reality than what they were told going to bed last night. Yeah. If they went to bed at 10 o'clock at night, they're going to wake up tomorrow morning and say, what happened and what I was basically lied to last night for a good portion of the night.
Yeah, there's extraordinary pressure now on governors, on state election administrators, and on local administrators to count these remaining votes under the watchful eye of the president, the former vice president, and the American people. And it's going to be characterized by the partisanship and the anger and the vitriol that we've seen for the last many years.
And I think one thing I will say, the interesting thing about Pennsylvania being intact or this close is that it's driving distance from D.C. The question is, in 2012, we had planes on the ready at Dulles Airport ready to go to fly wherever they needed to go if we had recounts. How much of that team is ready to go and how much is deploying tonight? Because they can't wait till the morning. They should be on the ground at 6 in the morning. Out there planning.
Well, they told us they were going to be prepared for this scenario, that we're now in this scenario. They're likely have already started, and America will wake up tomorrow with this legal battle ahead. Gentlemen, thanks so much. It's been a lot of fun tonight. We'll all be back here tomorrow morning, bright and early. We want to go ahead and talk. We're going to have coverage tomorrow. Also, let's first talk one more look at the electoral map as the way things stand tonight. President Trump with 213 electoral college votes, Joe Biden with 225, but there is still plenty more at stake. We'll also talk about the balance of power here in the Senate. You can see where things stand right now, 46 seats in the hands of Republicans, 44 in the hands of Democrats. Still, again, a lot more to be decided. We're going to have a runoff in Georgia in that one race. But tomorrow morning, we'll wake up, we'll continue to look ahead and see what comes. Our coverage begins tomorrow morning at 7 a.m., hosted by Bob Sellers and Tom Basili. Don't miss that. They'll have the latest plus complete analysis with top guests including Jenna Ellis, Matt Schlapp, and newly elected Congresswoman Lauren Boebert. From all of us here at Newsmax TV, Sean Kreisman, Rob Schmidt, Heather Nauert, Sean Spicer, Mark Halpern, thank you so much for joining us tonight and letting us bring you this coverage. Have a good night or a good morning. We'll see you soon.